hear from Secretary Cayetano for his opening statement and the budget. But before that, may we request the COMSEC to read into the record the presence of all our friends here. Thanks.
Good morning, Madam Chair. For the proposed budget of the Department of Foreign Affairs, we have the following resource persons. Secretary Alan Peter S. Cayetano, Ms. Maria Teresa B. Dizon de Vega, OIC USEC for Administration, Undersecretary Ernesto C. Abella, Undersecretary for Strategic Communications and Research, USEC Sara Ariola of the USEC for Migrant Workers Affairs, Assistant Secretary Leo Herrera Lim, OIC USEC for International Economic Relations, Assistant Secretary Maria Helen B. de la Vega, Office of ASEAN Affairs, Assistant Secretary Maria Amelita C. Aquino, Office of European Affairs, Assistant Secretary Maria Lumen B. Isleta, Office of American Affairs, Assistant Secretary Neil Frank R. Ferrer, Office of Consular Affairs, Assistant Secretary Maynard Monte Alegre, Office of Asia and Pacific Affairs, Assistant Secretary Alex G. Chua, Office of Fiscal Management Services, OIC Director General Celeste V. Balatbat, Foreign Service Institute, Secretary General Lila Ramos Shahani, UNESCO National Commission of the Philippines Secretariat, Executive Director Maria Lourdes M. Salcedo, Human Resource Management Office, and the DFA family at the back. Good morning to everyone.
Thank you very much. May we hear from Secretary Cayetano? I'd also suggest that you can read your opening statement and submit the soft and hard copy, but also the mission, vision, the usual. We can just go and see the slides, but proceed with your budget. And allow me also to put on record the amendments for 2018, just so that we know that you know that there's additional money this year. And the agency has also requested some augmentations for next year, which I already approved. So that's always a good news for the DFA. Never has it happened that I think the DFA had an augmentation for this year of almost 800 million, and that's upon the request of Secretary Cayetano. And there are other requests from some jurisdictions for augmentations, both for capital outlay, PS, and MOE for next year, which I already approved. So I proceed with Secretary Cayetano.
Madam Chair, to Senator Lauren Legarda, Chair of the Committee on Senate Committee on Finance and the godmother of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Actually, ma'am, you're not...
I didn't hear you say fairy.
Okay. In English ko lang po, pero sa Tagalog, ninang ng DFA. Hindi lang sa panahon ng budget, pero sa lahat po ng issues, and hopefully maihabol pa ang isang batas na nag-update sa Foreign Service Act given the trends around the world. But ma'am, we'd like to thank you and the Senate for your support. Many of the problems are being solved because of the resources that you've given us. And we'll just go quickly, ma'am, through our vision, mission, and everything, maybe 5 minutes. Then I'll pass the budget presentation to our Assistant Secretary, Alex Chua, for the detailed financial side. So, Madam Chair, DFA seeks to be the salt and light for all the Filipinos all around the world. Next slide. We shall continue to assert and pursue an independent foreign policy. We shall continue to reach out to all nations, regardless of their prevailing political persuasion or proximity, or to or distance from our shores, so long as these nations wish us well. This is part of the 2017 SONA of our President, and he's been consistent with the independent foreign policy and the friends to all, enemies to none. Next. The DFA wishes to pursue a patient, prudent, and purpose-driven independent foreign policy through a principled but pragmatic approach where the interest for our people and the desire for a strong-rooted, comfortable, and secure life are paramount. Be a friend to all and an enemy to none. Strengthen ties with old allies but engage new partner nations. Our job is to build, bridge, build. Next. Upon the inspiration from the Senate chairperson on finance, although we have officially three pillars, which is national security, economic security, and welfare of overseas Filipino. We do believe that there's an underlying common denominator, which is historical ties, culture, and the arts. No? So as far as the presentation, we'd like to put promotion of Philippine culture and the promotion of the image of the Filipino in the Philippines alongside the three pillars of Philippine democracy, Philippine foreign policy. Just for information of the body, so we have, as our part of our report, 20 official and state visits, high level, meaning by the President, 139 bilateral agreements. Next slide. We have about an estimated 10 million 223 overseas Filipinos. The DFA is working closely with the DOLE to find a way to be able to monitor and be of service to all Filipinos around the world. Kung titignan nyo yung statistics, ma'am and sirs, morning, Senator Drilon and Senator President.
I'd like to acknowledge the Minority Leader, former Senate President Frank Drilon, and Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Morning, sir, ma'am. So we are, as a takeoff also of the hearing where Senator Cynthia Villar was proposing or saying that we should have a system to be in touch with Filipinos all around the world. If you look at different agencies, iba-iba ang statistics pagdating sa overseas Filipino, you know, because wala tayong isang buong repository na nasaan ba yung 10 million Filipinos. Ilan dyan ang dual citizen, triple citizen, ilan dyan ang ano. But per post po, we have quite a good estimate. So now is how to put a command center for the government to be able to be of reach by any OFW around the world. China, for example, Madam Chair, has about 110, 120 Chinese citizens outside China. And the Chinese citizen can dial one number, and that number will automatically connect to both their embassy and to the home office, and they can monitor the problem from there. We're working on that now, but we might work on it through a grant because so far ang stand ng gobyerno, IT goes to the ICT and not to each individual. No? But I think the Palace, DFA, and DOLE should have one system together on that para madaling ma-monitor.
This is just a matter of dialing one number and accessing the embassy where the OFW is. So it's not
it's actually, ma'am, a complete IT solution system. So it also has the tracking. So when a person leaves, where is he, where is she? Then, you know, giving them the application so that they know what services, paano, trying to put things online. So it's
not just a 911
yes, it's not just a 911 number. It's like a 911 system. And like the 911 system, they have to have MOAs with the fire stations, with the ambulances, with the hospitals, with the doctors, you know. So
this has to be in coordination with the POEA.
Yes.
And these are only for overseas Filipinos who are working?
No. If ma'am, if it's only overseas Filipinos, OFWs, that's about 2 to 4 million depending on people's estimates.
Yes.
Kasama yung undocumented.
Yes.
But it does include, you know, second, third, fourth generation Filipinos, let's say in the US, no?
Those who were born there?
Yes.
So it includes those who are dual citizens already,
yes,
or who have embraced other citizenships?
Yes. Or those who can become dual citizens. So,
yes.
so like our estimate in the US is 3.9 million Filipino Americans. But how many of them only have Filipino citizenship? How many of them have both US and Filipino citizenship? How many of them are Filipinos by heart and blood but are American citizens and don't have Filipino citizenship? And just to insert in this discussion right now, we are considering the comment and proposal of former Senate President Drilon to remove the fee for the oath-taking because Ambassador Lulier had an experiment. We actually charge fees for anything we do for the administrative. But given not only the suggestion of Senator Drilon, but Ambassador Luyer did an experiment. He paid 1 month for inubunahan niya, dumoble at trumiple yung nag-apply.
May
So for
we
a
know,
small
Secretary, how much is the
$50. $50. Yes.
Madam Chair? Yes, good that the Secretary brought this up early. Because indeed, I could not understand why the Budget Department recommended the veto of this very simple provision. How much do we earn out of this? Very negligible. But this is one of these disincentives for our compatriots to become Filipino citizens because of this fee. The fee is it $50? $50? Okay. If it is only one, fine, $50. But if you have husband and a wife, that's $100. If you have husband, a wife, and 3 children, that's already $250. To the ordinary overseas Filipino workers, this is already substantial. That is why I know, and I ask later how many have availed of this dual citizenship law. The number is not significant, which means the fees that we are collecting is not significant. I suspect that it was vetoed simply because it was my proposal. I hope not. Yeah.
I hope not, and I don't think so.
Yes, but indeed, I was very disappointed that the reason for the alleged reason for the veto of this, for the President exercising the 9 veto, is that it will result in a loss of revenue. My goodness gracious, how much revenue will we earn?
This is actually similar to the National Museums asking for fees to enter the museum.
Yeah.
Sabi ko, napakaliit namang kinikita nyo. Libre na lang ang museo. Tapos ngayon, ang dami-dami nagpupunta tuwing Sabado Linggo. Same
in
thing
this
here.
case, the
But this is turning
goodwill
Filipino.
generated is certainly much more in value than what we earn. So I do hope that, and we will propose this again as an amendment. We will repeat.
Not yet, but what we will do, Your Honors, is that we will put a supporting study with it to show that not only is the loss of revenue negligible, but the tendency of a person who now has a Philippine passport to participate in the Filipino community, to visit.
We can abbreviate all these studies and amendments in the plenary. We consider it adopted as of this hearing. So there will be no fees regardless of a study, how much it will generate for the Philippine government. Hindi natin ikayayaman yan bilang bansa, pero ikayayaman natin bilang Pilipino. Kaya ina-adapt po natin yung na-veto. I'm having it checked if it's a veto or a conditional veto. I'll see if it's conditional. Yeah, I'm having it checked. But otherwise, for 2019, regardless of how it's treated in the GAA in 2018, we are adopting it already as an amendment for the 2019 GAA.
We thank you for that, Madam Chair.
We hope that we have the commitment of the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs that he will support this proposal. Because the last time it surprised me, we brought it up, there was no objection from the DFA when this was brought up. No, absolutely, there was no objection.
This year, sir, will push for it, and it was the same case with our consular offices. Despite the backlog and the problem with getting appointments passport, in the last few years, they said that it will cost more money to open regional consular offices. But last year, the Senate, you gave us 8 more consular offices. So now we're doing about from 9.5 passports a day when I came in. We're now doing 19,000 a day. And we've already opened San Nicolas and Santiago, Isabela. When we open the others, it will be much faster. And when we computed, Your Honors, 80% of the money goes back. So the real cost, for example, for a consular office is between 15 to 21%.
You
Kasi
know,
bumabalik naman yung pera.
Madam Chair, really, when we look at, and I've been here sitting in the budget of the DFA for the last 2 decades, I always ask, how do we can we justify our presence in a particular country, either political or trade or consular services. Any of the three. And where we cannot justify the presence because of any of the three considerations, then we have no business being there. Now, in the case of consular services, when one takes up his oath as a dual citizen, for the love of me, I could not understand the policy decision in vetoing a fee of $50 to each Filipino family or former natural-born Filipino citizen to be liable for. So I do hope we have the assurance on record of the Secretary of Foreign Affairs that this will be supported, and we will again reincorporate this with the approval already of the committee as an amendment to the as a special provision in the budget, and we do hope that this does not suffer the same fate as it suffered last year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We recognize the presence of Senator Dick Gordon.
Morning, sir. And we would like to commit to Senator Drilon that we will push for it because we believe in it. We think we will benefit from it. So next slide, please. So expanding Philippines' global presence, we now have 60 Philippine embassies, 21 Philippine consulate general, 4 permanent missions, and 3 posts to be opened in 2018. We do have a priority list, Madam Chair, but for 2019 so far, none were included in the NEP. Next slide.
Next, before the next slide, Madam Chair, how do we compare to Thailand, Malaysia?
Let me just check.
Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam. Just
let me get the exact figures, but offhand, I think Singapore has less than us. But Indonesia, Malaysia has more. Indonesia has the most. The reason I know this, sir, aside from it's my job, there's now a proposal in ASEAN for us to share consular services among ASEAN nations in areas that we don't have a Philippine consulate or embassy. Yes, and just like the EU, sir, yes. And Indonesia is studying it because the burden will be on them because they have the most number of consulates and
anyway,
embassies.
can we have just a reading of how we compare in terms of our presence vis-a-vis Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia?
Malaysia has 83 embassies abroad and have 69 consulates and 2 other representations.
And Thailand and Indonesia?
Yes.
You can give it to
We'll
me
go back
later.
to it.
Yes.
I will get it. Okay. Next slide. I'll go through this very quickly. Some of the things that both the President and DFA has been focusing on is enhancing regional and multilateral engagement, especially the successful 2017 ASEAN chairmanship. We want to build upon what was achieved last year. Next. Addressing traditional and non-traditional security threats, especially our partnership with Malaysia and Indonesia in the anti-terrorism and anti-piracy. Next slide. Protection of sovereignty and sovereign economic rights. Next slide. Providing fast, efficient, and secure passport system and consular services. I won't go into detail, Madam Chair, with your permission, unless you have questions later on. Next slide. Providing fast, efficient, and secure passport system and consular services. So from 2016 to 2017, we had a surge of 600,000 more applying for passports. Now, half of the year, we already have more than 2.1 million. So we expect this demand to be high because of income going up, travel still being relatively cheap, and tourism push all around the region and the world. Next slide. Addressing the main problem is the wide gap between the demand for passports and the capacity. So in May 2017, we could only do 9,500 a day. Now we're doing 19,000 a day. We are hoping by the end of the year, if we can open all of our consular offices and add to our Passport on Wheels will be able to do 30,000 passports a day. No? This is processing, sir, because the printing is quite good. No? So far, they can handle the capacity. Next slide. Assisting overseas Filipinos, we'd like to thank again the Senate and the House and of course the Office of President for the 1 billion assistance to national fund, assistance to nationals fund. So far, we've had 42,000 beneficiaries this year, 7,900 walk-in, 2,037 beneficiaries of the Legal Assistance Fund. Almost 2,000 have been assisted who are victims of human trafficking, and then 10,000 assisted and repatriated. Yung repatriation program po natin is quite good because we don't charge them anything, and in fact, we even give them some assistance when they get home. No? So most of these still are from Kuwait, but pumapasok na rin po yung galing sa UAE, and then we're working on some from Saudi Arabia, from Saudi and Malaysia. We still have a problem with trafficking, especially in countries that are dangerous around the world, because basically the contractors like Filipinos. So they get contracts from a different country, but that country subcontracts and gets Filipinos. No? Next. So strengthening frameworks to assist overseas Filipinos. Next slide. Fostering understanding and building bridges through historic ties, culture, and the arts. Next slide. So what is provided under our NEP? So under the Office of the Secretary, it's 27.4 billion. But 7.5 billion of that is for the hosting of the Southeast Asian Games. So basically, Madam Chair, the budget is relatively the same as last year, at the same level, except that this is a cash budget. 69 million for the Foreign Service Institute, 3.6 million for Technical Cooperation Council, and 25 million for UNESCO. Although we think that the Technical Cooperation Council budget should grow, this is where we have a opportunity to be of assistance to countries like Timor-Leste, like Papua New Guinea. They keep requesting Filipino teachers, and it's cheaper to send them there and more beneficial for the teachers than to get their students as scholars here. You know. Next slide. So
That's
go
the
back.
small amount of the technical cooperation.
Yes.
Apart from Timor-Leste, what are the other countries that we give assistance
Papua New Guinea,
to? PNG,
Vanuatu. In the past, Lao, PDR. We have had scholars here in the Philippines from Lao, but not necessarily from TCCP.
So that's only 3 million. So now we send teachers there.
Now they really want more cooperation with Filipinos. And like in Papua New Guinea, they're opening up their land for co-production of rice with the Department of Agriculture, but they also want the technicians to teach there. So we think it's a good soft diplomacy method, you know.
So the previous kind of diplomacy was making the young the youths come here for scholarships.
Yes.
I remember there was when the former late ambassador Cabangon Chua was ambassador to Laos, then eventually he retired, but he came back. He was even hosting the children of the Prime
His
Minister.
scholars,
the
ma'am,
president.
now are deputy minister levels already.
I know, yes,
Yeah.
they're already. So instead of inviting scholars here, we're sending our teachers and technicians in those countries. Is that
We're doing
correct?
both, ma'am.
Yeah.
But as far as the scholarship, there are other departments giving that, or even the private sector. But as far as sending, I think it will be cost efficient for the DFA. And then it also give our teachers some exposure if they eventually want to be OFWs. Yung iba kasi bagong graduate, bagong pasa ng exam, nag-OFW na. This would give them a chance to serve the country for a year or two. Then if they decide to work abroad, then may experience na sila.
3 million is for the travel of our teachers to teach in Timor, Vanuatu, and PNG.
Yeah. Actually, that's their total
Yes.
budget
Really?
already.
3 million, that's
Yeah.
all we have for
Yeah.
technical cooperation.
Yes.
That's a bit small. Are we already complying with all our technical cooperations forged between presidents of the Philippines, not just President Duterte, but President Aquino, President Arroyo, and countries that we cooperated with. We only heard the cooperation for these three small countries. How about in the past? Kasi tuwing may bibisita rito o bibisita ng Pangulo, pirma, pirma, pirma. But do we actually implement, do we operationalize those cooperation agreements? I know for a fact that the Philippines has been shepherding or helping Timor-Leste become a member of ASEAN. That's been since 2009. It's almost been 10 years. I know that even their parliamentarians need help in the crafting of legislation since they're a very young country. So are we actually abiding by all cooperation agreements inked between the Philippines and Timor? How about other countries in the past administrations as well?
Before a comprehensive report on that, which we'll submit later with your permission, Madam Chair, what I've noticed is that the economic agreements and labor agreements were quite on top of it, you know, both sides. But for example, even political cooperation, even consultations, even the joint trade or economic councils, for example po, meron dyan 10 years hindi nagmi-meet pa, 5 years hindi nag-meet. Even the agreements with science and technology. Some of it has come to life now, but there's still a lot that we have to review that hasn't come to life now, whether we're the beneficiaries or we're the benefactors.
Could we request for the committee a summary of those not implemented, even a status of those implemented with countries? You're correct, whether as the sending country or as a beneficiary. Because I am certain marami diyang mga napirmahan tapos natulog na lang, sayang eh. Oo. And
For
that's good diplomacy for other countries. Yeah, for PNG. PNG has great opportunity for agriculture, for trade, for even for Philippine labor.
And even for Filipinos, ma'am, for example, many don't know that Israel, just because we're going there next week, but as example, no, they bring 600 students for a 10-month training every year. And they're paid the regular wages. So they average, they come home with about $4,000 to $6,000 in their pocket, despite still spending there. China has a young scientist program wherein you're there between 1 to 3 years, and the young scientist actually gets $3,000 allowance. So there are many programs, Korea, Australia, UK, EU, even in the US, that baka kulang lang sa information, or the burden is basically on their embassy here. But I think, you know, we should collate this and give it to the Senate so that the senators will also be aware of, you know, possible cooperation. Ma'am, the other areas is Bhutan, Solomon Islands, Laos, and Cambodia.
You know, what is the agreement with Bhutan? Because Bhutan is the only country in the world that has environmental protection in their constitution, where they say, if I am, correct me if I'm not wrong, that at least at any one time they should have 70% forest cover. The 70, I'm not sure, but find out what is that percentage. Isn't that a great people that has as a part of its constitution the protection of their forests? And they're the ones who have mainstreamed the GNH, as you very well know, which I asked NEDA to 10 years ago to adopt, but I was probably laughed at. But the GNH of Bhutan is something worth looking into. Anyway,
So
yes,
far,
Bhutan.
Madam Chair, it's been one project, which the topic was gender sensitivity and entrepreneurship. You know, and
Tayo ang beneficiary?
tayo po
At tayo
nagturo.
nagbibigay?
Yes. And we're becoming a leader in two areas, no? Which is the on rights of the migrants, not only migrant workers, but in the global compact we played a big role. And the second one is on women, you know, women in governance, women in the private sector. Medyo nagiging in demand ang Filipinos to talk about it, you know. and
May I
share
also
experience.
suggest that we, in terms of policy, we are a leader. In terms of implementation, unfortunately, we fail. And that's in DRR. And we are talking about, you mentioned small island states and small vulnerable populations. Bhutan and Timor-Leste, Vanuatu, which is an island which is disappearing, and Solomon Islands and PNG. So even those five, we can share our laws and policies where I don't think we can share what we're doing because implementation-wise we're very poor. But in terms of policy, we're regarded as the best in the world. So we can also include disaster risk reduction as part of our cooperation agreement. And then from the bigger industrialized nations, we can get grants because maganda yun eh, nagtuturo tayo ng magaling tayo magsalita at sumulat eh. And then we can get, let's say, from Germany, cooperation agreement, which they give a lot through the GIZ for implementation of the DRR policies, which we teach the small island states. So just food for thought.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we'll, with or without an additional budget on that, we'll put some focus on that. Next slide. So our budget is 0.73 of the total budget. Next slide. But the DFA ranks 6 of the top 10 revenue-generating agencies. Again, to the point of former Senate President Rilon, certain fees won't affect. There are certain fees that we're looking at that can be removed aside from the pag nag-oath taking to become citizens. That will, but we will still be in up there sa collection. No? Next slide. So, Madam Chair, basically, Tier 1 is 18.42 billion, very similar to last year's. Under the cash budget nga, bumaba pa siya. No? Sa Tier 2 naman, ma'am,
May we know the Tier 2?
the
Can you
Tier
just give a
2,
rundown, please?
why don't you give, no, yung, can you put the breakdown nung sinubmit natin na Tier 2, no? But basically, ma'am, what they did is, yung Southeast Asian Games ang ginawa nilang Tier 2, yung DFA Tier 2, hindi na ipasok. It's a different presentation. Okay, Alex. Actually, I just have like 3 more slides. Can I finish then go na to the Tier 2? Okay. Let's finish it na. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Just a comparative on the cash-based amount. No? Next slide. What we want to accomplish, we'll submit it na lang to you, ma'am. But it's next slide. Just an example, no. 14 foreign service posts, but this is within the next 5 years. No, so it could be 1 next
The
year. Could be
14
3.
is not part of the 8 open this year.
We were not. We submitted 14 to DBM. None was approved.
Can you just, without the new ones yet?
Yes. Yes.
Not this year. Apart from this year.
Apart from this.
May
year.
I hear the 14, please?
Citizen service. So,
Does it include Kazakhstan or this year na in Kazakhstan?
reopening of Palau, Bogota, Colombia, reopening of Barcelona, Spain, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Morocco, Sweden, Dublin, Havana, Kazakhstan, Nagoya, Istanbul, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Melbourne, International Maritime Organization, London. This is a very small post, but they since it's a maritime organization and maybe around half of seafarers around the world are Filipinos, we are highly recommending this. Then, but Madam Chair, those are the 14, but we'd like to prioritize Barcelona, Nagoya, Stockholm, and Istanbul, Dublin. Well, depending on how many you say, but we'll give you a priority list.
Barcelona, we committed that last year. I was wondering why it was not included this year. It should have been. And Addis Ababa as well. Stockholm, the ambassador talked to me, the Swedish ambassador, 2 years ago, and we tried to have it included this year. Unfortunately, it was not included. We don't have presence in Central Asia, right? And there's so many Filipinos already in Central Asia. Do we have any posts in
That's
Central
why we're
Asia?
proposing Kazakhstan.
Hindi nasama 2018. Yeah.
How many posts are we trying to open this year?
This year, 3. It was supposed to be 4, sir, pero we couldn't get permission from Saudi Arabia for Al-Kubar. So so 3 plus 1 ho. So yung 1 inaayos pa ho natin. but they allowed us to do missions there. So, so the three are Frankfurt, Copenhagen, and Houston should be open in a few months. All three already open. Should be inaugurated.
And next year,
Next year, we'd be happy with 3, very happy with 5, and very, very happy with more than 5.
well,
But I think,
you know, Mr. Secretary,
yes.
during the time of the late Secretary Ople, I was the one who raised the issue of what is the standard that we use in opening posts abroad. And we agreed that basically we'll look at 3 factors. Political, as in we must have posts in all ASEAN countries, in the US, etc. Number 2, economic, meaning that there is a substantial trade or potentially large trade between in the place where we are. And 3, of course, the reality is we have Filipinos all over the world. Now, I would like to think that these are reasonable and realistic standards before we open our posts in different parts of the world. I would like to think that the priority should be to strengthen our presence in the areas where we have a large number of Filipinos in place, particularly in the Middle East. So that as a result of this, on the choice of the DFA, I think we closed, how many, I don't recall, 10 postings, because it could not be justified under any of the 3. But we did not, number 1, I committed to the DFA then that I will not reduce the budget, and we did not reduce the budget. It did not result in the displacement of any personnel because we redeployed them in the areas where we needed them, particularly in areas where there is a heavy concentration of overseas Filipino workers. So that, and so I think we closed 10, which were the choices of the DFA. We did not interfere. One of those, what I saw with my own eyes, was the one in Venezuela, where we really were doing nothing. And so, but in other, that is why I was wondering whether or not we are following the same policy which the DFA set then. In other words, can we rationalize and justify the opening of this post on the basis of any or all of the 3 factors that we have set?
May I confirm, Madam Chair, to the Honorable Senator Dolonia? Yes, we're following that 3 plus another one, security, which you can also put under political. So, for example, in Turkey, it'll be a big advantage for us there because a lot of the...
We're present in Turkey, right?
Yes, but we're in Ankara, but as far as the... so, as far as the business, for example, sa Africa, no, China will be hosting almost all the leaders of Africa, and the UN and US are also putting some focus because they look at the great potential of the African economy. Of course, varies from one country to the other. So if you look at Filipino companies, for example, our water companies, no, they're going to different countries already. Nagiging multinational na rin. Or if you look, for example, at the company of Mr. Carlos Chan, no, not only was he successful in China, in India, and then now he's in South Africa also. So I'd like to confirm, sir, that yes, we're looking at that. But of course, some of the indicators are more potential, than the tradition. So when you say economic, for example, let's say Colombia, some will say, what's the opportunities there? But they're opening up. and we need a base in the Latin America community or Southern American community because they look at us as their Latino brothers far away. So there is a move by them to be closer to us. And in fact, they buy some of our products, but through some of our neighbors rather than from us
So
directly.
given those the criteria, which posting are we going to have for this purpose of the 2019 budget? And how are we justifying them? How many postings are we having?
Yes.
How many new postings will we have?
We submitted 14, for
Four.
1-4. We submitted 1-4 to DBM.
Uh-huh.
None was approved
For
So,
2019.
for 2019. So if the Senate tells us you will add, we will follow that number and give our priority. Guarded. But if not, we will follow the DBM NEP and not
And
open any.
for this year, 2018, you would have four,
Three.
three.
We opened 3 and
you open 3.
one is we weren't given permission yet.
Yeah, but how will you fund your how did you fund the 3 or the 3 in the budget?
Through the Senate in the
Yes,
GAA of
and-
2018.
Okay, so and the 4th one is also in the budget.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
There are potentials in Africa for Filipino movies, believe it or not. Yes. They buy our telenovelas, our movies. They really love it.
In relation to that, can I relate a very specific episode? I'm not kidding, and this is a fact. We were in IPU, Vic. If I were not with Vic. We were in the IPU, and in Kenya. I said no, in Kenya, one of the African countries. Nairobi, not Nairobi, another one. No, there is an African country where all activities, commercial activities, would stop at noontime. Why? Because there is a Filipino telenovela. Yes, I'm not kidding. Yes, and why would they be so interested? Because the Filipino men in the telenovelas would shed tears. To the African men, that is something unheard of. And therefore, they know, nagulat ako, kilala nila yung mga artista sa, I'm not kidding. That is why Senator Gordon is correct. There is a potential there for this kind of an activity. But in fact, ang isa pa dun yung skin whitener. Who's this guy? Who's this Filipino? Corporation. So I told those guys there, I said, you better disappear here. I said, sir, why? Because you cannot, if you succeed, you'll be beheaded. If you fail, you'll also be beheaded. But really, it is in where is what's the home country of this dictator who was Uganda. In Uganda, you check in Uganda. See, Idi Amin, you know, they have this episode. They have this very peculiar situation where they watch telenovelas at noontime, and it's very popular because African men are wondering why Filipino men would cry, and they know the names of the actors and actresses.
And by the way, senators, that's a very big potential, not only because of the market, but the trend now is for production to be for small companies to be content providers.
Right.
So before it was channel 2, 7, 5, and so forth to produce everything. Now even these networks are getting from the same source that Netflix, iFlix, and other companies are getting this content. So even for young startups here, for a minimum capital, but with lot of creativity, they can be able to enter those markets. So
Well,
it's good with what the top
I'd
said.
like to just echo what Senator Jordan was saying. In Papua New Guinea, they stop at 4 o'clock to watch telenovelas. And also, when I was in the board of the Red Cross, the delegates from Africa would come to me and say, can I get a hold of some Filipino content providers for our cable TV? They want Filipino movies. So it's important that I think we have a roving, I don't know whether it should be trade or foreign affairs official who should be looking at all this. Besides, we have a lot of Filipinos working in the oil fields. And Kenya is a very, very good potential also for tourism in terms of they're beginning to get out also. So South Africa, of course.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'll stop there. Would you like maybe we can put on the board the tier 2, as proposed to the DBM.
I just have one question. We're opening up Ireland, Dublin. You know, we opened up Dublin. Remember, we opened up Dublin, and we had one ambassador there, and then after a while, he's right behind me right now, and I don't know whether he botched his job there, and then we closed it. No, because he's retired. He's retired already. And why are we opening up Dublin again? I mean, what is the decision? There is no consistency in the decision making. We had a consul general in Houston, in New Orleans, and now we're opening up again. Can there be some measure of predictability and consistency in our decision making? I agree with Senator. Yes, I agree with Senator.
I think
the political aspect of security, listening post, diplomatic initiatives, economy, even for the African nations. I mean, I think we should have something roving there because when it comes to votes in the United Nations, we would need them, or for that matter, Latin America. Some of our people would run in international positions, and we can't even get the votes of the Africans or the Latin Americans. So, I mean, there's got to be some standard that should be out in the offing that should allow DBM to be convinced that we need some of these postings in strategic areas. You could have one ambassador covering 4 areas as we used to do. France used to cover Russia and other areas in Europe. We can do that, but we have to justify that. And we cannot make DBM make the decision for us because national interest dictates that we have listening posts, that we are looking at trending, what kind of businesses opportunities are there for our people. I mean, movies are one, and there are many others. TV is another one. You know, you go to Netflix and you see Los Ultimos of Spain. They have a new movie that Senator Angara, our good friend, used to, he started relationships with the Spanish on that. And now they have a new one in Los Ultimos. We could do our own version of Los Ultimos and send it there. But, you know, these are just maliliit na aspect yan. But there has got to be a standardized decision upon which we could have continuity in foreign policy, especially in our postings. And I think we should really, you should really convince the Senate that to help you on that because I think it's important. I'm really rather disturbed why we're putting a large chunk of DFA money on the Southeast Asian Games. I mean, there should be some money for the sports program and not for the DFA. I don't know why we're handling that, quite frankly.
okay. To answer those 2 questions, first we agree with you that there has to be some standards, as Senator Drilon already, elaborated on, which we followed before. Maybe partly it's also the integration of the DFA into the economic team. So the DFA being in the economic team, we have a little bit of a voice now in our engagements. Kasi ang problema ho ng DFA, pagka nag-open tayo ng deals or ng cooperation agreements, DFA nandyan. Pag nagkasundo, yung dalawang bansa or yung state-owned enterprise or private, na-out na ho kami. Then we come back in pag may problema. Because now it becomes a diplomatic...
Quite frankly, I don't know how you can be outed with your ability to speak. and assert yourself.
Thank you.
I'm surprised that you would be
Yeah.
outed if there's such a word in the English language.
Thank you, Senator. What I meant is that the embassies, di ba? So sometimes pag sinabi sa embassy, oh, eto na problema. Sabihin na, last time ko nakita yung agreement na yan 2 years ago nung pinirmahan natin. Hindi nyo na kami in-inform and everything. But now with our integration to the economic team, we're still not part of the NEDA board. We were removed from that. But we travel with them, we get instructions, we give our thoughts on everything. So, and I think secondly, it's also part of the finance since we've had 5 years of good growth in the Aquino and then so far 2 years of good growth in the Duterte administration. So there's more confidence in spending and putting up posts. In Dublin, sir, the problem is we have 13 to 15,000 Filipinos there, and it's handled by UK. And UK and Dublin have different visa regimes. So it's not only very costly, but very difficult for Filipinos to go back and forth. So what we do is that if we do reopen the embassy there, we'll also push for some economic opportunities. So it won't, we shouldn't have it just security, political, economic, and OFWs. So we'll try to put all three together.
Same problem in Istanbul.
Yes.
They have to go to Ankara to get their passports or to get their passports renewed.
Yes.
Or for that matter, the problem of many Filipinos where they are made to go home when they have to renew their contractual services. I would imagine our embassy should be able to handle the revalidation of their contracts of service. Is the DFA looking into that with the DOLE?
Yes. We have monthly meetings with the DOLE at the secretary and undersecretary level. And the cabinet has approved a OFW working group under one of the clusters. We're waiting for the final decision of the cabinet, whether it will be a cabinet cluster or it will be under the human development cluster. But let me just affirm your point, Senator, that kulang pa ho talaga sa coordination. Ang dami pa ring abroad ho, maganda coordination kasi the ambassador is automatically the nanay, tatay, or mayor or governor. But when you get back to the Philippines, di ba, pag training, sabihin mo, TESDA, pag ganitong aid, sasabihin, DFA yan, o kaya POEA, OWA yan. So, meron pa rin degree of turuan that we want to get rid of.
If I may intrude, I am very concerned when we reduce our budget for the Foreign Service Institute, because I have had nothing but praises for our ambassadors abroad. They're very undermanned and they're able to do their job well. To reduce that, which is our load for training of future ambassadors or future diplomats, I think is kind of dangerous. That's where we're failing. The continuity factor of trained ambassadors, or for that matter, do we already have, I said this last year, do we have Arabic speakers, Arabic analysts of trending there? Because, you know, we have to look at these things, because the last one I know is Pex Castro. I don't know if you have, that wasn't answered last time. But Pex Castro was an expert in Arabic affairs at the time, and we get our oil from the Middle East. We have a lot of people out there, and we're always disturbed when a Filipino dies there, but when they start talking, the ambassador there doesn't understand it. Even if we send a Muslim, he doesn't understand Arabic. So these are things that I think we should look at very, very strongly, Mr. Secretary.
We totally agree, ho. Especially, may I add 2 more factors. One, when we open posts, we need more officers. So in fact, we're trying to have 2 exams rather than 1 exam for certain openings or posts for DFA officers. And even if they do not eventually stay in DFA or enter DFA, taking the exams is a good experience for them. Secondly, for continuity, yes, we might have people like S. Tago, our Assistant Secretary, who's in Libya now to help with the hostage situation, who is an Arabic speaker, who's very knowledgeable of the region. But we want that continuity for every batch.
Not only an Arabic speaker, but an Arabic expert.
Yes.
Somebody who delves into the minds of the Libyans or the Saudi Arabians. They're very peculiar.
Yes. So,
Excuse me. We have a 30 million amendment for this year for implementation. Is this the Foreign Service Institute? 30 million for scholarship. Is this scholarship for the Foreign Service Institute for young career officers, or is it different?
It's separate. It's separate.
So where is this 30 million going to be implemented?
There are some offers from other countries and from universities in the Philippines to give scholarship for masteral or further studies
For young career officers.
young career officers. No, even not too young.
So I'm sorry, the 30 million for young career officers for
Yes.
scholarships abroad or here?
Both, both. So, for example, NUS has offered us that they'll pay for everything, but we still have to pay for the ticket and then for.
So this does not answer the question of Senator Gordon for more support for the
Yes,
FSI, or does the FSI budget for this year suffice?
No, FSI, will make do what they get, but they need more. No, because you're correct, Senator. It's the heart and soul of the, it's like, yes, yes. For the 30 million, we do have a breakdown that we can submit to the committee.
Let me add something. Last year, we made an amendment and we added 20 million for training of Arabic experts. What happened to that? Has that been spent?
I'll
20
pass
million to get Arabic,
our head of the FSI now used to be the
Celeste?
executive director of our fiscal, so she knows both sides of it. So may I pass?
Thank you very much, and good morning.
Good morning.
We do have, as you correctly pointed out, Mr. Senator, we have a 20 million fund for foreign language training for DFA
Which we included
personnel.
last year.
That's right. Thanks to the initiative of the Senate, and for that fund, we have been implementing language programs. We have been bringing foreign language training opportunities to our consular offices, not just for those who are here in Manila, but also those who in the regions. We're also offering online training programs on foreign language so that we expand our reach. Unfortunately, for certain languages such as Arabic and Mandarin, we've had limited demand. So maybe as a way forward, we're
Limited
going
supply or demand?
limited demand, meaning initiative from people to take an interest
Precisely,
in
the supply.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the way forward there, Mr. Senator, is for us to work closely with our Human Resources Management Office so we can proactively identify people who can be taking these foreign language training.
I bet you if you go to the colleges like UP or the other schools, Lyceum, and you tell them that there would be a very, very good career for somebody who can learn Arabic, can learn Mandarin. And by the way, I would imagine that in our desks, in the African desk or in the Middle Eastern desk, meron kayong mga dyaryo na binabasa. Paano tayo makakabasa kung di tayo marunong magbasa ng Arabic? Paano tayo makakapag-interpret kung anong ginagawin sa atin ng mga Arabo? Kung anong mga policy yung binabago doon? That's why I think we're flying blind, Mr. President. Huh? And it's very embarrassing na when the President goes there, we hire an Arabic interpreter from their own side, or the Chinese. There would be enough in Xavier who speak Chinese now. My grandson just went to University of New York in Shanghai because precisely of the future of China. He sees a future there. So I'm sure there's enough young people who can go out there and help them. We can provide scholarships for them. Diba?
Yes, sir.
I'm really very concerned about this. There's a gap there. Kung di tayo marunong nung salita nung mga
Senator,
areas na marami tayong empleyado, marami tayong pinapadala. In China, meron tayong concern sa ating security, at di tayo marunong bumasa at di natin maintindihan yung kanilang sinasabi, delikado tayo. Kailangan talaga meron tayong malalim na team na papasok dyan. Kung hindi, delikado tayo.
We totally agree, not only DFA, but all departments, especially the economic and security.
Yes.
So I brought this up during the cabinet meeting, especially with regard to K to 12, because there is still a lot of room in the different tracks of K to 12. And Secretary Briones said that they're already having these programs. In fact, when they offered Korean, they said 1 million students signed up. So how good the program is at sustainability po ang concern ngayon. But you'd see, no, basta't may trabaho on that language,
Yeah.
may interest, no. So how do we get those good programs in elementary and high school?
Mr. Secretary, just one quick point para matapos tayo dito. I went to Nueva Ecija in Palayan. There's somebody there teaching Japanese in the zone there. So many people. Because, tama ka, gusto magkaroon ng hanap buhay. Pero kung dadalhin mo yung idea na makukuha tayo ng Arabic speakers, you're assured of a job, if you learn Chinese, marami tayong makukuha. I think it needs a little bit of aggressiveness on the part of DFA and the part of Department of Defense na manguha tayo ng mga bata na papasok dyan, na mag-aaral. Nung bata kami, nag-aaral kami ng history of Russia. Si Mrs. Angara, kasabay ko. We were really trying to find out what is going to happen to our country with respect to the Cold War. It's important that we can mine the history and government and political science sections of major universities in our country, especially those who are going to go to that course, and introduce these languages already. In fact, even in high school, you can mine Xavier already. These are, or Chiang Kai-shek, or St. Jude. Ang dami-daming mga Chinese schools dito. And they would love to learn Mandarin. They would love to be of service to their country. If we don't do that, we are at a severe disadvantage. Talagang delikado tayo. To me, that's a national security concern.
We're already feeling it. For example, in Russia, since we suddenly have a lot of agreements, you know, on different so yung nadidelay minsan because of lack of yung magka-translate. And sometimes you can get local translators, but for example, for some security matters, you'd rather have Filipinos translating it and not people of different.
I have one in Olongapo that we sent to Russia to do filmography. And he's wallowing there. Walang pumapasok. Magaling na bata. I think you should tap into these guys.
No, I really agree with Senator Gordon that if you give them the opportunity to study Korean, Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, all of that, German, etc., we have 100 million population. Ang daming millennials ay mga bata. We're brilliant people with the facility for language. The fact that we have almost 100 languages, Filipino languages or dialects, and magaling tayo, magaling ang dila, magaling ang utak. So we give the opportunities and open this to the world. Just to clarify, we have the 30 million, which is scholarship for our young career officers, and that is for schools and institutions in the Philippines and abroad. And the 20 million amendment of Senator Gordon, which we adopted, which is in the FSI, for languages, etc. So that's 50 million augmentation of the budget for learning. I hope that all the young career officers, young and old, and medium age, know of these augmentations, because otherwise, hindi nyo magagamit yung pondo nyo. Oo. And so,
Yes.
Let me just reiterate. Look into the technical cooperation, 3 million, so small. Look at more support for FSI. Depends if you're able to use your 20 million and your 30 million. And pakalat po nyo ang impormasyon para gamitin ng matatalinong taga-DFA na mga bata at mga non-DFA pero gustong pumasok. And I don't know if you hire them as local hires or what, as translators, interpreters. But Senator Gordon is correct. It's not enough we learn the language. We learn the culture. We learn the history so that we would know how to deal with them, not just diplomatically, but politically, and enhance our national security. That's so important. So I'm in full agreement with that, and I hope that you're able to spend the 50 million this year.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
just as a point of information and clarification, TESDA teaches Spanish, Arabic, German, Bahasa Indonesia. TESDA. And they have a lot of people going there. You can mind that. By the way, I would advise the DFA to read Fail Safe. That was a Cold War book that I read a long time ago, and there's a movie. And the translator there was not just translating for the American president, he was interpreting the intonation, and he was interpreting the intent of the Russian premier when they were negotiating on a possible nuclear war. Both sides, the interpreters were doing that. And if you watch another movie, I think that starred this Australian actress. She was an interpreter in the UN. Ganun yan, importante yan. We really need interpreters who know the language and who know the people. That's why they have to have history and government background. An expert in Russia, an expert in China. We need this. And we need this right away. Right away. And we start in the high school and in the college. I am very passionate about this because talo tayo. You have terrorists now sending messages here. Hindi natin naiintindihan. Ano mangyayari sa atin kung maisahan tayo? Wala makuha yung DFA talaga ang magiging source na. So, I'm for supporting more money for that.
We completely agree, and maybe we can ask the Senate also for help, because the Carlos P. Romulo School of Diplomacy under the FSI actually has courses on Bahasa, Indonesia, French, German, Mandarin, Nihongo, Arabic, and this is open not only to the DFA but all government agencies. So in the DFA, what we're doing now is we're putting
It's been open to government agencies for government employees to take it in the
to take the
FSI
course, yes,
for free.
for free.
Ayan, hindi lang natin pinapakalat informasyon.
Yes.
Huwag natin ilimit sa government agencies. Maski na take college students sa...
Yes. Sa college student, ma'am,
probinsya, oo.
TESDA also has good education programs. It started with Senator Joel Villanueva, and now it was strengthened by Secretary Mamudyong. What we're trying to do now in DFA is the incentives for them to do it. So one incentive is the posting. The other incentive, for example, why don't they get foreign masteral or doctorate? Because we have 6 years abroad, 3 years at home. So if you're 3 years at home, if you take a masteral 1 year or 2 years abroad, you'll wait another 3 years before you get posted. So we're looking at the rules if we can amend it that a 1-year masteral abroad would be credited as home office so that you can go. Because anything they learn, the service will actually benefit from it. So we're looking at what incentive we can. The programs are there. It's really the people who are applying for the...
Kailangan po siguro i-monitor nyo. We need experts. Hindi lang, mali yung pinag-discussion natin eh. Nag-uumpisa tayo sa interpreters. Pero yung interpreters yan, kailangan maging experts na magbabasa kung anong gagawin ng isang bansa sa atin. Kung wala yan, talagang bulag tayo, kakapa-kapa talaga tayo. I think you know that, Mr. Secretary. I mean, all of our people here know that, but siguro kailangan lang ng konting tulak na konting initiative yung career guidance sa high school. Doon tayo magsimula. This is not gonna happen overnight. You're gonna have to do this program every year, and you're gonna have to monitor it until you're able to come back and say, we have our expert here in the Middle East is the following, our expert here in China is the following. So we will be very comfortable. We're focusing on ambassadors, but we're not focusing on experts, on reading the intelligence, on reading what is happening there. Kung hindi, matatalo tayo talaga.
Just to clarify, good points, Vic. The FSI only accepts scholars from government agencies or even from the private sector? Or only DFA?
Madam Chair, the FSI provides scholarships for DFA personnel. Actually, we serve as secretariat for the scholarship fund, which belongs to the DFA. But apart from that scholarship fund, as Senator Gordon correctly pointed out, we were given 20 million for foreign language training, and so far the money has been allocated for DFA personnel to learn foreign languages.
I agree with Senator Gordon that we should expand it if it's allowed by COA. My question is, I leave it to you, do we expand it? Because the DFA personnel are busy in some posts or here. Let's expand it to other government agencies. Is it not allowed now? It is allowed.
Yes, it is allowed.
Can you
And
put it on-
Madam
is it
Chair,
allowed?
for some agencies, it's but obvious. For example, we have trade attaches.
That's right.
We have tourism
So my
attaché,
question
defense
is
attaché.
Is
So
that the present setup, or should we manifest it, or you should have an IRR for the implementation of that scholarship fund? It can be done. Yeah, can you put it in
Ma'am,
writing?
we are providing foreign language training for personnel of government agencies who join us in the post as attached personnel. That's like
Can
part
we
of their
expand it?
preparation.
Because what if they don't join in the post but they'd like to learn?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's
I
just
think it's a
expand
good.
the universe.
Yes.
Because first, we have the need. Second, we have the funds. Third, we have the people.
We agree.
Just open everything to learning as long as COA would allow it. Is that what you want? No? Wag lang
We
sila.
agree.
Oo.
Because if they're going to be assigned at dun mo palang tuturuan, it's too
Yes.
late na eh.
It should be
Dapat
here.
you create their interest
Now,
from
my question
the
is, should it only be government? DA also. There are agriculture attaches, there are tourism
defense.
attaches.
defense.
So, there are defense attaches. Oo. So, should we limit it to government agencies or even the private sector? Because how can you recruit, hindi ba pwedeng private sector?
My opinion,
No.
Madam Chair, is that,
Yeah.
you know, even if we open it to government, other departments, baka hindi mapuno pa rin. Because nga, yung kulang pa sa incentives and sa pag-push. So, we can limit it to the attached, but kung ako, if we can
not
open it
limit
up to
Can we
everyone
open-
and
I
bring
agree
them
with the
in.
Secretary, even the Senate, because I am informed that the FSI conducted language classes here before. In fact, my Chief of Staff took up, what language is it? Spanish. Do you speak Spanish now? Can you sample? Naturoan ka ba? Nag-graduate ka ba? Tama. No. Me, I'm studying.
The
She's-
LGUs have a
She's
high
Spanish speaking. You are what? French speaking, and I'm German speaking. See, European languages. No, I'm just kidding.
our
Anyway,
LGUs are
so
also
let's
in high
open here.
demand for training sa protocol naman, because there's a lot of sister city program. May ano na rin direct connection city to city around the world. So
Mr.
we're also
Secretary,
doing that.
we have national security concerns, right? There are threats to our country, and I don't want to have to say that here. We should learn the language of those countries. We should have interpreters, not only in language, but in their culture and their politics. Experts. And you cannot do it when they're already in the DFA. You have to get them from the schools, from the colleges, and train them now. Have a career path for them. In the same manner, you could do that for DTI, you could do that for defense. Sa akin, gayon pa lang, I would suggest that you submit, Director General Balatbat, submit a program that we can support here and we can put money in so that we go on a massive recruitment program. Because kung wala tayong experts, patay tayo. Wala tayong kalaban-laban.
We agree, Senator.
Just to clarify, we do allow employees from other government offices to attend our training programs, including foreign language programs. This is for our regular core activities. But for the 20 million that was given to us, that has not yet been expanded. We're going to have some informal consultations with COA to check on the
This is of national interest and national security concern. The 20 million is nothing. It may as well be 100 million to create a career path for many young people who will understand that what they're going to do for the country will be very, very important. This is not just 20 million gagasto sa inyo. This has got to be a long-term program, an ongoing, continuous program where we have experts. When you put somebody on the African desk, they know Swahili. When you put somebody in the Chinese desk, he knows Mandarin and the nuances of the Shanghainese and the Beijing and the Northern Chinese. When you put somebody on the Russian desk, he must know kung Central Russian yan, kung anong Central Asia yan. It's important. I know it sounds big, but we have to have that. We don't have a DFA if we don't have those experts. You are our guide. The whole darn problem is we're now concerned, and rightly so, because we have a lot of people in the area. I will introduce a problem here. I have two citizens of the country right now in Iran, in jail. And they are going to be tried by the Revolutionary Council. And we have not been able to get them out. We have not been able to get any information, and nobody can interpret ano mangyayari. To me, do we have any Iranian expert in law or whatever their government is to find out how we're going to be able to help these people? They're being accused of espionage. They came from Oman, and they were caught taking photographs in Iran, and I've written, and I've always, they're being accused of nag-i-spy kayo. So yung magulang, iyak nang iyak sa akin, tawag ko ng tawag, informally. I wanted to do a privilege speech already and tell if Iran is our friend, they should release it. But I want to make sure na kayo na mismo ang humawak po na yan. Because you cannot settle everything by bombastic speeches here. You have to go back channel on matters like this. But sa akin, if we don't have an expert in Farsi or Pashtun, if that's the language or whatever it is, abay, delikado talaga. I used the word delikado several times already because I really believe that if we do not have this, papaikutin lang tayo ng mga Chinese. Papaikutin lang tayo ng mga kausap natin. Even the president, he doesn't know we're hiring interpreters from their country. Learn from others. Learn from the State Department. They have all kinds of experts in different languages. And if we're going to deal with the world, as we have to, because we have so many millions of people abroad, we have to have this. We're not beginning to send people to Russia. We have a lot of people in Turkey. And who are the experts? Ano, persons and family relations? PR? No, you cannot do it by PR. To me, national security concern. So Director General Balatbat, I suggest you have a wider vision on what we're trying to do here.
We agree, Senator, and we'll get on that. As to the Iranian situation, I met with the foreign minister. I'll go up to you later on because there's some developments, so I can update you. Yes, for Chair 2, can I refer to Asset?
We have a copy. Just give me a copy of the Tier 2. That's a 1.8B. That was flashed on the screen just to abbreviate the proceedings. Perhaps what you could do is to the Tier 2, gawin nyo ng sub-Tier 2. So, in case a 1.8 could not be granted, what are your priorities and the justification? But I see the 14 areas that you want to open or reopen, and the cars, etc.
Madam
So
Chair, may
just
I
the
just
priorities.
take
Yes,
up
thank you.
one matter that's not there. The DFA submitted 5 billion for the building in our property in Japan because the initial meeting between our ambassador in Japan, the Secretary of Finance, myself, and the, if I'm not mistaken, the Executive Secretary, is that we should develop our properties there and increase the value. But I think there's some discussion between the Secretary of Finance and the DBM whether it should be a PPP or not. But let me just put on record that we're looking at two properties that can be further enhanced and developed. The one in New York, lahat ng katabi natin doon, mga bagot malalaki, no? And it's such a good property. And then sa Japan. So wala sa budget yan, and I'm still coordinating with the two departments. We submitted it sa Tier 2, pero since it's a big amount, I don't want to debate.
Madam Chair,
Go
can I
ahead.
ask a question? Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm particularly interested in the Japan properties, Mr. Secretary, because as you are aware, there was a previous decision of the Supreme Court which prohibited the Philippine government from alienating the properties because it is of public dominion and outside the commerce of man. So may I know how we can alienate these properties? Did you mention alienation, Mr. Chair?
No, sir. To enhance the value by building, by redevelopment. By
Enhance
building
the
them.
value
So
by redevelopment.
we're talking specifically of the Nampenday property, which is situated in Shibuya-ku, Tokyo. So we have several offices, and we need space, even for the visas, for the consular, for Filipinos to use. So the properties that's there, and it's of high value. So we can actually build and use it ourselves.
Uh, are we entering into a joint venture with some group?
No, sir. There's many proposals. We have not entertained anything. And the direction that Ambassador Laurel and Secretary of Finance is giving is that it'll be better if we just build and we use it ourselves.
We build no participation of the private sector. We fund it ourselves.
Yeah, that's the direction of
Yes,
the
yes,
SOF,
yes.
and the DBM said look into a PPP, but we're not ready to look into a PPP because precisely if it's PPP, then there might be some alienation or there might be some commercial use of it.
Yeah.
But just our own needs
Yeah.
can more than suffice. Kulang pa ho yung space doon na
Yeah.
gagawin.
So we can
Yes.
devote funds
Yes.
for capital outlay for the improvement of our offices
Yes.
on the Nanpinday. What
We're,
about the
we're doing very well, sir, sa Panda and Samurai Bonds. So the proposal of the Secretary of Finance is that we have Panda bonds to finance it and build it ourselves.
what about this the other properties, the Kobe commercial property and yung sa Kobe? Di ba may properties din tayo doon?
No plan, sir. So we have Roppongi property.
Yeah.
We have the Kobe residential property, the Kobe commercial property, and the house and lot in Fujimi, Tokyo.
So there are no plans to alienate this,
No, sir.
encumber it with any
No, sir.
joint development with the
No.
private sector.
No plans at this
Okay,
moment.
yeah. We'll appreciate if there are. We should be
We
informed.
will inform the...
Not only to inform.
Yes.
You know, we are conscious of this Supreme Court decision, so we should not.
The minute that we have any plans for the 4 other properties, whether we build ourselves or any, we will inform all senators to a letter to the chairman of the Committee on International Relations.
And I would think that we should not encumber or alienate these properties. We should develop it ourselves, and we learn from our past mistakes. The property in San Francisco, which the PAL property, was sold,
The one
and look, we're all biting our elbows. So
with your permission, I'll also inform the Secretary of Finance because there's a special bids and awards committee for development of Philippine properties in Japan, and the head of the bids and awards committee is the Secretary of Finance. But so far, there's no concrete, just a proposal now to build.
Madam Chair, just a point of inquiry to Senator Drilon. I'm not too familiar with the Roppongi decision, but is that all? Does that apply, Senator, to alienation, or can the DFA build it and lease it to some people so that it can handle some of our expenses? I mean,
well,
if it's in New York, especially.
the ruling, Dick, is the property may not be alienated as it is of public dominion, and it is outside the commerce of man.
So we cannot even lease it.
You need, it is not patrimonial property. Property
Algo
continues
siguro.
to be part of the public domain until there is a formal
Correct.
declaration on the part of the government to withdraw it from being such, and therefore I assume that requires an act of Congress also.
That's correct. That's what I was
Not to
heading for. Because to my mind, not to sell it, but to profit from it. If the government will profit from it, I think we should create a law to allow them to lease it, not to have a public-private partnership, but Dominion should always belong to us.
Yes.
But the DFA can lease it. We
With
can
your
build it.
permission, we'll answer that question either the next hearing or the plenary. Because, for example, in New York,
Yes, sayang yan.
yung ilalim po nun, napakaganda. So we use it not only for the tourism and others, but kung may magre-rent, let's say may art exhibit, the only implication is the tax implication. But let's say for other areas like Japan, pag OFW meetings, nagre-rent pa ng ibang lugar. So if you better to rent your own or use it for
But the
free.
difference between the New York and the Japan properties that the
That's true.
Japan properties are part of our reparations agreement.
Yes,
Right,
yes,
right.
sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
that's
sir.
why.
It's a
That's a huge
Yes,
difference.
yes.
yeah.
May you request from the DFA information on areas where we are renting, where we're incurring more expenses, and it would be wiser to invest in properties because that area's real estate is fast rising. We may not be able to fund it immediately for next year, but at least we have an idea and we can allocate it and you can include it in your NEP. Maybe one or two, if we have a source, we can include it in 2019 as an amendment if my colleagues would agree. But you can put it also in your NEP.
We will submit.
Yes, because I can't just recall now, when we meet ambassadors and DFA personnel, they always say, mahal-mahal na renta, patas ng pataas, tapos they'll cite Southeast Asian nation, sila may-ari na nito, sana tayo'y bumili na lang, mas makakatipid pa. So, importante, in the long run palagi, ang ating, long term ang ating visioning. I think Yusek Tess
I
knows
agree
about
wholeheartedly with what the chair is saying, because I think in Rome we already got property, no? It belongs pa to the Pope. When I say in Rome, we bought property recently, big building. I think it's important. I don't know if we have done that in Germany. We're still renting.
No, we're very proud. Under our watch, we were able to fund the
Dubai.
Berlin Chancery. I
Yeah.
visited it last time. It's about to be finished this year. Kasi ang mahal-mahal na ng real estate sa
Right.
Berlin, buti na lang, maliit lang.
But I
400
think,
square meters lang
Madam
yata,
Chair, I
maliit lang.
think it's
Pero,
important that we own the property, like France, or in we used to rent in Kensington in London. Do we own property now in London? Wala na. Yeah, no, si Kompa yun eh. We own London. Do we own property there already? Do we own property in
Madam
London
Chair,
already? Not yet? We
perhaps
should,
you could give the committee a list of all, yan na lang, all properties owned by the government, occupied by consulates or embassies, and those which are being rented, but there's possibility for owning and their available properties affordable.
and a strategic
Yun.
plan, Madam.
Strategic, yeah.
And a strategic plan to acquire property. That should be the general policy, that the government should own the land upon which we are having our embassies or our consulates. I mean, this is an ambition, devoutly to be wished. Diba? Dapat magawa natin yan.
Is it clear that there's a rule, an unwritten rule, that we're not supposed to sell? We're not supposed to sell, right? We should acquire, in fact. We
As a
should not
general
sell.
rule.
Yes.
As a general rule. But
So no
sometimes there,
properties are being sold.
as of now, none.
Yes, I think
No.
that's clear. Land is finite. So, tataas ang presyo and we should not sell. Hindi kaya yaman ng Pilipinas yan pag magbenta, ikalulugi natin dahil tataas ang presyo.
Saka yung dignidad ng bansa. Ang nakita naman wag naman tayong mukhang kawawa. Na maganda naman yung building natin and we're improving it because we own it. Kasi if we don't own it, we're not going to improve it. I think that should be the policy, Madam.
Another question, Secretary, the allowances of the officers and the staff. I know every how many years it's adjusted based on the cost of living in that area. I know that in 2000, when was the last adjustment? 2015. How often is it adjusted? Every 2 years? Alam ko matagal na hindi 20,
It should
2012
be
or
every 2
2013.
years, diba?
Yes.
It should be every 2
I
years.
recall it was 2012 or 2013.
The-
I was in London and someone said kaka-adjust lang. In fact, it was Aquino administration and it was adjusted then. After 2013, mag-2019 na tayo. Wala pa. Wala.
Yes. So the last time, ma'am, was 2013. The DFA submitted in 2014 to the Aquino administration. And then, so it's guided by an EO. No? So we have one now pending with the Office of the President, the Executive Secretary. But having said that, there are some posts that cannot wait. So I also submitted to the ES some stopgap for some areas that it's really too expensive already for people living there. Not to mention the exchange rate, kasi we usually base the exchange rate pegged to the dollar, and the last 2 years, of course, tumaas ang dollar compared sa peso.
Not an automatic review of the DFA based, let's say, every 2 or 3 years. it has to be
Theoretically, under the
an
EO,
EO.
every 2 years, but it takes more time than that. And so, like now, the Copenhagen, when I saw the proposal, I asked them, will that be revised in the next few years? Sabi, malamang hindi. So sabi ko, gawin nyo ng progressive. Hindi nyo pwedeng sabihin lang na you want 105, 110%, pero you know that it's now already 120 ang cost, and next year it will be 125, you know.
Why do we need an EO to be approved if a previous EO already stated that it has to be reviewed and upgraded every 2 years?
But they approve, ma'am, hindi kami. We submit the differential, but it's the Office of the President that approves it. Unless they delegate it to us. For example, ma'am, Geneva, Hong Kong, Oslo, napakamahal na talaga. So, umaangal na talaga yung mga tao natin doon na
We bought property in
Yes,
Geneva.
yes.
Yes, we did.
yes.
Bumili tayo doon. Bumili tayo. We have to. Mahal-mahal na doon eh.
Both the WTO and the mission? Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, turnkey ho yung sa Geneva, so we're in the process.
It's important. Ano? Oh. Oh, UN kwan yun eh.
We're in the process of acquiring her, turnkey yung
Ano mabibili niya? Tulungan na natin mabibili.
I don't understand. The adjustment in the cost of living of overseas DFA personnel has not been incorporated in your NEP of 2019 because the EO is pending. Is that my understanding?
the adjustment ho. So we're still following the 2013 rates.
That's why 2019 ito. Paano mabubuhay yung mga tao sa ginaw, sa init, sa sasakyan, sa eskwela? Hindi makatao. So, if we're waiting for the EO to be accepted, to be approved, eh wala sa 2019 yung proposal. Paano mabubuhay ng marangal ang mga DFA doon? How do we even expect them to be at par with their
I think there are,
taghirap, di ba?
Madam Chair, I think there are enough lump sum appropriations in the budget insofar as personnel is concerned, precisely to fund contingencies such as this. So,
Sige.
meron yan.
Nandyan si
If
Yusek
the-
tas gumaganon.
Now, if the
So,
stopgap is approved, we can get the money from
Yes.
the
BBF,
BBF.
Miscellaneous
Yes.
Personnel Benefit
halad sa
Fund.
inyo sa
Yes.
Tinuturo sa akin yan ni
How much
Senator
is, just
Yoli.
give us an idea, if it's approved based on your proposal, how much are we talking about?
For example, example ng Hong
The
Kong.
total amount.
In total adjustment. Number 53 po. Living abroad and inflation.
100 M. Buong mundo na yon.
Katulad ng ano yan, di ba? Ang clothing yan, pare-pareho lang, di ba? Whether tropical
Mga
or-
kotse ng mga
But as an
konsulado.
example, Senator, no, sa clothing allowance, index sila, but for example, those with harsh winters, talagang with harsh
Hindi
winters,
na sila giniginaw yan. Kasi natuwa ako, sinabi niya,
mahal na yung
giniginaw.
damit, mahal pa yung
What about their cars? Nililista na natin ang kotse, di ba? We're just leasing, di ba? Or lease to own, di ba?
we purchase.
We purchase.
Usually, yeah. We have a car refleeting. Part din po kasi ng representation ng
Yeah,
ambassador
I
yung
agree. At one
embassy
time I
car.
was there, I remember one congressman was berating a poor consul officer na tumirik yung kotse. Sabi ko, di nyo binibigyan ng pera. Bigyan nyo ng pera. Nakakaya, nakapila doon sa French one eh. Are we okay on that? Our embassies are okay on the representation?
We
of
do
this
need
kotse?
to refleet kahit pa konti-konti every year because after 5-6 years, hindi na ganun
No,
ka.
these people represent our country. Hindi naman pwedeng mukha tayong kawawa doon sa Vietnam o kawawa tayo doon sa ibang bansa. Hindi naman pakitang tao yan. Fiscal discipline is important, but the honor and reputation of our country, dapat pinapakita natin. We take care of our people abroad. Di ba? Oh. So, walang problema na doon. Okay na yan.
We're approved 61 of our proposed
Pinapapasa ko lang nga eh.
of our
Tinatanong ko eh.
proposed to 66 po. 61 ang na-approve. Ma'am, just as a comparison, ang budget ng buong DFA is like the budget of Manila, Quezon City, or Makati. You know, the whole DFA na yon, buong mundo na tayo. So, while we do ask for increase, but also in perspective, no, it's like one the top 3 LGUs in the country.
See why we're asking these questions, to make sure that our country is well represented, not only in skill, but at least in the accoutrements, the basic accoutrements of proper diplomacy. Diba?
Madam
Just to-
Chair.
Yeah, summarize. The cost of living, we will expect the EO to be signed, and the source will be the MPBF. So it's not in your NEP will do that, and then you'll submit to us the areas where we're still renting, where we can buy. We recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although iniintay ko sana na matapos ma-present yung DFA budget, but I have to leave in a while to chair another hearing, so I'd like to, with the indulgence of the Chair and the Good Secretary, to pose some questions now. Una po, in 2014, the Philippines voted in favor of UN Human Rights Council Resolution 269, the adoption of which paved the way for a process to elaborate a legally binding treaty on human rights obligations of transnational corporations and other business enterprises. So, may we know the status of this process and what the department has done to push this forward? By the way, Madam Chair, this is a resolution that was likewise supported by other Asian countries, China, India, Indonesia. And we are going up to the 4th open-ended intergovernmental working group session in Geneva this October on this process towards
To give us a
treaty.
more comprehensive answer, Rico here just came back from Geneva and was the deputy. Can I give him the microphone?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Good Secretary. Speaking of the angel, napag-uusapan din po namin si Sir Rico. So, Sir Rico, kung maaari, brief lang po kasi may iba pa akong tanong. Salamat po.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Yung dalawa kasi pong proseso, yan ang isa po, yung Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. Ang isang proseso, yung Intergovernmental Working Group on Legally Binding Instrument on Transnational and Business Enterprises. Pareho po tayong active doon sa dalawang proseso na yon. At pareho po tayong nakipagtulungan po sa iba pang mga bansa para ho dito. Ang understanding ho natin, medyo matagal na proseso po yung legally binding. So sa ngayon, nag-uusap pa rin po ang working group na yan, headed by the Permanent Mission of Bolivia and Ecuador. Ang process na yan. At ang Pilipinas ay very active in supporting such process.
Just one brief follow-up para sa ngayon, Madam Chair. Nakikipag-ugnayan din ba ang department sa CHR, sa mga civil society organizations at human rights networks
Kasama
sa
po sila namin
participation
po,
natin
ma'am,
dito?
na kinoconsult para po dun sa posisyon ng Pilipinas.
And we continue to sign their credentials when they represent us, let's say, in the UN.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the Good Secretary and to Sir Rico. Ngayon po actually ito yung bulk sana ng mga tanong ko ngayong umaga. On the reported 50 to 100 diplomatic actions against China. So it was reported that the Good Secretary claimed in a congressional hearing that the Philippines has filed 50 to 100 protests and or diplomatic actions against China over the past 2 years. So kung ganon, that would average one every week. So masasabi po ba ng department what's the nature of the 50 to 100 diplomatic actions? Meron din po kayong recent na statement na 85 diplomatic actions, pero parang overall sa lahat ng mga bansa. Pero meron din po kayong sinabing 50 to 100, particularly vis-a-vis China. So, ano po yung nature ng mga diplomatic actions
Madam Chair,
dito?
the half of the congressional hearing house, so we had two already with me present, and one of them, kompleto ho kami with SND, NSA, NICA. And half of it was behind closed doors because of the sensitivity of some of the issues. Basically, we were explaining to them that the Aquino and Duterte strategy diverge at some point. Same objective, secure our national territory, secure economic rights. But because of certain circumstances during the Aquino administration, they chose to internationalize the issue and to confront China at almost all and every possible avenue, especially in multilaterals. So when President Duterte came in, we were very concerned that the Chinese will be building in Scarborough, because ang iniwan po nila sa Aquino administration is that unless may provocation, kung walang provocation, hindi kami magtatayo. But they considered certain actions of the Philippines as provocation. So nung nag-usap ang Duterte and administration and China, ang pinamulan ng usapan is that, you know, status quo, we will not lose a single inch of our national territory and sovereignty, and then we want our fishermen back in the area, environmental issues addressed, and also the safety of the life at the seas. So what happened then is that we decided to come up with a bilateral consultative mechanism. No? Under that BCM po, lahat ng complaints, lahat ng protest nandun. We still do issue note verbals, we still have verbal protest, we still have mga demarche or any kind of diplomatic action. It's just that we don't announce it.
But Mr. Secretary, could you at least give some general idea to the committee? So, you're confirming that there were 50 to 100
No,
diplomatic
when
actions. Follow-up ko, alam po,
Go ahead,
sa isang
yes,
binanggit nyo. So, how many were in the
Yes.
form of notes verbal? How many were diplomatic démarches? How
Yes.
many were collective notes, kung meron man?
Honestly, we haven't counted, but we're giving you the assurance that each and every incident, we take the appropriate diplomatic action. Si Congressman Alejano ang nagpipilit na magtanong, ilan? So we were telling
Ako
him,
rin po.
yes ma'am, but we're telling him, in a purpose-driven foreign policy, how many doesn't really matter. Yung sinasabi po
Mr.
nung critics katulad ni Justice Carpio na pag hindi ka nag-protest ay acquiescence. One, is not true. That's a fallacy. And number two, it's not true that we didn't protest.
Mr. Secretary, in fact, binabasa ko po itong DFA seeks to be the salt and light for all Filipinos all around the world.
Yeah.
At meron pong mga key terms dito which my questions
Yeah,
address.
sure.
Yung independent foreign policy, yung purpose-driven independent foreign policy, to a principled approach, and our people's desire for a strongly rooted and secure life. Meron din po rito yung preservation and enhancement of national security, and last but not the least, meron din po dito yung protection of territorial integrity, sovereignty, and
Yes,
sovereign rights, kung saan po naka-enumerate productive engagement with stakeholders on maritime matters, including the WPS, negotiation of a transparent and effective ASEAN-China Code of Conduct in the South China Sea, which there is regional, it's multilateral, hindi lang yung bilateral tulad ng ating consultative mechanism, at saka passage of archipelagic sea lanes and maritime zones bills. Surprising po yung feedback ng China sa atin na they consider certain of our actions as provocation. Actually po, kahit hindi po sa labas po ng department, sa labas po ng Senado o buong Kongreso, it would seem that the actions which are provocative are China's. Tayo, we take action within our rights, lalo na po sa ilalim ng ating historic and irreplaceable na tagumpay sa ilalim ng Hague ruling. And I can hardly believe po na hindi nyo nabibilang. I mean, you already said publicly 50 to 100 diplomatic actions. So it's hard to imagine
Senator,
that our department hasn't counted those different
Senator,
kinds of
they asked me
protest
to
actions.
estimate, but I explained to them that when the president talks to President Xi, that is a protest. when I talk to my counterpart and tell them that is a protest. When we file a note verbal, and depende, if you put 3 items there, you're protesting 3 items. That's why
So
when they
more or
were,
less po, how many notes verbal have we sent China?
I can count and tell you in a closed session, but what I'm saying is that it's not our playbook, it's not our strategy now to keep announcing that because we are getting results. I'm not saying that tama ang China na may provocation. I'm just saying the reality on the ground, which is when you have a dispute, it's just like the US is saying masyado maimportante yung freedom of navigation dyan because of commerce, no? Sea lanes dyan. But if you talk to China, pareho sasabihin sa inyo that if the sea lanes there are closed, their economy will collapse because 70% of their economy is through their coastal states.
Of
So-
course, Mr. Secretary, we are not closing any sea lanes
Yes,
to
nor-
China. The department itself is seeking an ASEAN-China Code of
Yes.
Conduct in the
My
South
point, my
China
point,
Sea.
Your Honor, is that
And besides, Mr. Secretary, you are here, we are having this conversation with the treaty-making body
Yes,
of the
yes.
Republic. And that's why we are asking these
Yes.
more particular
Yes.
questions, which we hope to have more particular
Yes,
answers on.
and we will answer the question and fully inform you. But of course, we will not do anything to harm our own strategy. Because precisely nga, it was the strategy of the Aquino administration to announce every protest and to get a reaction from China and to internationalize and to make it a big part of the relationship with China. It is, we have the opposite strategy, and I dare say that our strategy is working much better than the past administration strategy.
So, Mr. Secretary, what exactly is our strategy in terms of engaging China? And to follow up our earlier discussion, can the department give us the dates and times when these diplomatic actions against China
I
were
can,
made?
actually, we just got rained out, pero meron pong hearing ang based on several resolutions by the Senate. In a closed hearing, I can show you some and read some of them. And then some of them, of course, are notes because it's verbal or bilaterals, no? But you're asking what strategy. As I said, we confronted China before. And in 2012, we lost control of Scarborough. Now we're talking to them, but now we have co-control of Scarborough. Before, our fishermen were not allowed to fish. Now they can fish. Before, the harvesting of giant clams and the fishing in spawning grounds were allowed. Now we have a tentative agreement and we're all conscious of protecting the environment. Before, yung safety of the life of seas, hindi tayo makapasok sa loob ng mouth ng Scarborough Shoal, dun sa lagoon. Now we can. No? But to give you an example, Senator, no?
Mr.
Up on the
Secretary.
screen, just this point on protest, just to disprove the critics, no? Ito po sa screen, yan po ang mga nasa loob ng EEZ natin. Yung may kulay po sa side, no? And I checked, in the 6 years of the Aquino administration, the DFA never protested Malaysia and Vietnam of being in our EEZ. So kung tama yung sinasabi ng mga kritiko, na pag hindi ka nag-protest, give up mo na, tatanggapin ba ng treaty approving body na to? Tatanggapin ba ng Senate that we gave up territory to Vietnam and Malaysia?
The President has also used the term co-ownership in the West Philippine Sea, which is not actually a legal term in these diplomatic
Ma'am, ang
matters.
ginamit
But
po niya,
the good secretary has again reiterated this morning yung co-control, which the good secretary mentioned in relation to Panatag Shoal. I would, in the following hearings, I would like to explore further what exactly do we mean by co-control, because on the ground or on the sea, yung mga maliliit na mangingisda nating kababayan will tell a different story. There is no even so-called co-control, but Chinese control in a shoal that is within our own exclusive economic zone. So, Mr. Secretary, in these diplomatic actions, what channels and platforms were used?
just to clarify, ang sinabi ng Pangulo, it's like co-ownership. And he was describing the present situation. Because the situation he inherited, parang China may-ari. So, yes, there are some complaints by the fishermen. I've sent one of my assistant secretaries to talk to the fishermen themselves, no? And we got a lot of stories, but we also got a lot of stories of Chinese Coast Guards also helping them. Naubusan ng gasolina, nasiraan. Now, the Chinese Coast Guard are not trading with the fishermen to avoid any conflict or sabihin na hinahara sila. But we say co-control because our patrols go unhampered there. Our fishermen are now fishing there. We have a tentative agreement regarding the environment. Madam Senator, maybe this is the clarification that would help. No, we're not saying that the situation there now is ideal. We're saying we're making good of a bad situation. So when we came in June 2016, the situation was dire. The Chinese basically controlled the Scarborough Shoal. No, and in our briefing, I can go into more details and hindsight. Madali kasi magsalita hindsight, mali dito, mali tama. But the factual situation in 2016 is that the U.S. was having their election, and if the Chinese started to build, what could we do? The arbitration award does not have an enforcement mechanism.
But since the good secretary, Madam Chair, mentioned the arbitration agreement, that is actually the major fact on the ground, which we are not maximizing to our national interest. Even the use of the president of the term like co-ownership is very, very unfortunate. There have been other terms used by the administration and references like to Vietnam-China joint exploration, yun nga pong co-control sa Panatag Shoal, even in their co-whatevers with the other claimant countries in the West Philippine Sea, hindi po nagpapakita ng good faith ang China. We recall also here in the Philippines yung 2005 Joint Maritime Seismic Undertaken o JMSU na yung Vietnam, Petro-Vietnam at saka PNOC were left only with processing and interpreting the eventual data. Yung China National Offshore Oil Corporation was effectively in the lead. Kahit po yung Maritime Delimitation and Resource Sharing Agreement ng China sa Vietnam in the Gulf of Tonkin in 2002 has yet to be implemented in good faith. Kahit po yung 2008 JDA scheme sa East China Sea between China and Japan suffered a similar fate. Kasi parang doon, parang dito, Beijing began to unilaterally explore resources in the area and coercively challenge Tokyo's claim in the Senkaku or Diaoyu island group. And there was a statement earlier that our patrols, co-patrols go unhampered. Pero hindi po, kahit po yung mga reporters would report how makulit, how persistent, and verging on disrespectful are the radio messages of the Chinese Navy to our Navy as compared, for example, to the way they address even the U.S. Navy. So, the major fact on the ground, on the sea, Mr. Secretary, is that we are devaluing the import of the Hague ruling, which, according to observers, is the single most important decision so far under the UNCLOS na dihamak daw na nagpalawak ng global commons. Hindi lang natin, lahat ng claimant countries sa West Philippine Sea at sa buong South China Sea and all over the world, including in terms of freedom of navigation. And Mr. Secretary, how many times did the Chinese government respond to these different diplomatic actions, and what was the nature of their diplomatic responses?
Well, first, Madam Chair, may I respectfully disagree with you, and I think we have different information because mismong yung lawyer natin, si Attorney Reichler, ay kausap ko twice in our embassy in the U.S. And he told me that territorial rights is not divisible kasi it's either yours or theirs. Okay? But economic rights is by its nature or sovereignty rights divisible. That's why in his opinion, and he's our lawyer's arbitration award, this kind of agreements, fisheries agreements, agreements on joint development exploration is a means of implementing the Hague ruling. So what is the Hague ruling? Even some people in the different militaries around the world who are supporting us, and I can reveal that to you in a closed session, ask us about that. Why are you not enforcing the Hague decision? But the problem is the critics are merging territorial claims with sovereignty rights. What the Hague ruling said is that we have fishery rights, and we're now enforcing that. What it said is that we have rights of safety at life at the seas. We're now enforcing that. It says that there's an obligation to protect living and non-living natural resources there, and of course the environment. We're doing that now. So regarding oil and gas, no, we're getting 60-40 from Malampaya, and 40% of the energy of Luzon, 30 to 40% come from Malampaya. Malampaya is only good to 2028, and it takes 5 to 7 years to develop a new well. And in one well alone, the Sampaguita well, for example, no, it's as big or bigger than Malampaya. If you take the whole of the South China Sea facing the Philippines, no, the areas of the Philippines, the conservative estimate is about 100 times more gas than Malampaya. So, you know, the administration cannot just keep saying, Hague ruling, Hague ruling, Hague ruling, arbitral, arbitral, arbitral. And China keeps saying, we won't recognize, we won't recognize, we won't recognize. And all the other navies around the world saying, freedom of navigation, but we won't help you get the oil and gas there. There hasn't been one ally outside the world who said that they will help us get oil and gas there, despite the Hague ruling. Why? Because they say they do not get involved with territorial disputes. Meaning, while they are pointing to the Hague ruling, they themselves recognize that meron pong territorial dispute. So if we can get the oil and gas in that area and follow the 60-40 of Malampaya and follow the Philippine Constitution, then I would argue that it is in fact an implementation of our rights under UNCLOS. Remember, the arbitral ruling is simply an articulation of our rights under UNCLOS. With or without the ruling, alam na natin yung UNCLOS. Ang problema, meron dalawang dispute, territorial and sovereign rights. And it's the same thing with Malaysia and Vietnam. You know, if you're talking about the radio messages, all countries send each other warnings. You go near the Vietnamese held features, they will send you warnings. You go near the Malaysian, they'll give you you go near Pag-asa, the Philippine military. So when I consulted with the military, with the SND himself, he said, you know, Alan, SND, you know, the Secretary of National Defense, and the NSA head, Mr. Jun Esperon, Secretary Jun Esperon was in front of me. Sabi niya, alam mo, Alan, it's an issue and we should deal with it and we should talk to them. But military to military, routine na sa amin yan. Sa lumapit ka sa Pag-asa or any feature we hold, we will tell them this is Philippine territory. When Secretary Del Lorenzana landed in Pag-asa, and by the way, in the last, 10, 15 years, that's the highest official who ever went there. Even during the Aquino administration, the Secretary of Defense never went to Pag-asa. And
Mr. Secretary,
yes.
I'm sorry to interject, but I need to go in a while. So
Sure,
I'd just like to
Yes.
go to my last question for now before I make a motion to the chair. In the next hearings, we can talk more about the Philippines-China joint exploration, sovereignty versus territory, extraction of minerals on land territory versus extraction of oil and gas in the exclusive economic zone. I know you have different perspectives also about that 2004 Supreme Court decision. But just like to ask about another question before I need to go, Madam Chair, on the installation of missiles, Chinese missiles, in Philippine reefs in the West Philippine Sea. So on the report of Chinese missiles in the West Philippine Sea.
That's a paracel.
The
Madam Chair.
paracels.
That's
The
outside
Philippine-
our claim.
The Philippine statement is first that it's confident, the administration is confident that the missiles, if any, are not directed at us. And second, that it still has to verify reports that missiles had indeed been installed and that it is poised to acquire technology to conduct this verification. So na-acquire na po ba yung technology at na-verify na po ito? And I note, Mr. Secretary, that the department, the good secretary, found it of importance enough to cover it in a note verbal sent on 26th May this year. And then what are the next steps, Mr. Secretary? Sorry,
Yes.
Madam Chair, buuin ko na because in the interest of time, what are the next steps? Clearly, the Chinese have not withdrawn those missiles that are reportedly that reportedly bring the Philippines within range. Has the president summoned the Chinese ambassador? Will he? And can you confirm if the Philippine government has confirmed the existence of these
We
missiles on the
continue to
paracels?
deal with that in both a bilateral and multilateral. If you look at all ASEAN statements, which we are a big part in drafting, we are against militarization. But let me be very clear. It's only Brunei, Jerusalem, and the Philippines that is 100% for demilitarization. Yes, for non-militarization and demilitarization. But if you look at Malaysia, Vietnam, and China, all of them have defensive systems, or they will call defensive systems, on their occupied features, no? And all of these countries also have submarines in the water. Now, why did the president say it's not directed against us? No, because Beijing has nuclear weapons, these strategic weapons, and from Hainan, for example, I think it's only about, or from Beijing, it's 6,000 or 8,000 kilometers to the Philippines, and the effective range of their missiles is about 13 to 15,000. So if they wanted to put strategic weapons, or they wanted war, they don't have to put it in these facilities.
But of course, Madam Chair, just to close my line of questions.
Just to make sure
Yes, Madam
that
Chair.
the Secretary knows we're live on TV
Yes.
and online,
Yes.
and that the security matters being
Thank you, Madam,
discussed
for that reminder.
is suitable for public consumption for the
Yes.
world.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of course, Mr. Secretary, ibang usapin yung maglagay sila ng kahit nuclear missiles sa teritoryo nila. At yung paglagay nila ng ganitong mga missiles sa disputed territory, sa
Yes.
isang karagatan kung
Yes.
saan tayo rin ay claimants.
Yes.
And to put us within range of
Yes.
these missiles within that
Yes.
disputed
The Aquino
territory
administration
and our
included
own
that in their
archipelago.
included that in the
So-
arbitration award.
Yes, Mr.
But
Secretary.
the arbitral
Mhm.
court said that militarization and these activities of China is outside UNCLOS. So we have no choice but to deal with it in a with a multilateral and bilateral. So
And
just because we said that it's happening, it doesn't mean it's okay with us.
Earlier also, speaking of The Hague, Mr. Secretary, sabi nyo nga, we cannot keep saying, Hague ruling, Hague ruling, Hague ruling. If China keeps saying, we won't recognize, we won't recognize, we won't recognize. Pero mas alam nyo ito, dapat kesa sa akin, sa diplomacy, if one party says Hague ruling and the other party says, we won't recognize, then the one who was awarded the ruling can say, then no deal. So, Madam Chair, I look forward to the closed session, although
Yes,
not
Madam.
even now, I have to
Yes.
say in open session, bakit pati dates and forms, kahit hindi content, hindi dinidisclose. Sa ibang bansa, may press con pa nga yung
That's not true, Madam
administrasyon.
Chair. In
At
the
pag
other
hindi-
countries, even the
Mhm.
U.S. Secretary of
Mhm.
State and the U.S.
Mhm.
Secretary of Defense already
Mhm.
stated that they don't discuss
Mhm.
their strategy, they don't discuss certain actions in
Mhm.
public.
And Madam Chair, pag hindi nag-respond yung kabilang bansa, pinapatawag yung ambassador. It's not true that missiles are in territories with no claims by
No,
the Philippines. Missiles are deployed, for example,
No,
Madam
Your
Chair,
Honor.
on Fiery Cross Reef or Kagitingan Reef, Mischief
Your Honor,
Reef, which is
there's
250
a difference
kilometers
between
west of
offensive
the
and
Philippines.
defensive tactical
Kahit na
weapons.
po.
And the pictures that were shown and the buhaha was
Mhm.
over the paracel,
Mhm.
which is claimed by Vietnam and
Yes.
China, and not the Philippines.
But brings the archipelago within range. And lastly, as an example,
Well, we're within range
Subi
of
Reef
the
claimed by the
Malaysian and
Philippines
Vietnamese
also.
held features. They're inside our EEZ, but we
yes, who
continue.
are not threatening our claim to
They are
the
in.
exclusive economic zone.
Madam Chair, how
of
can
the
they
West
not?
Philippine Sea.
How can they not challenge our claim? They're in our EEZ. They are inside our EEZ, so we cannot treat countries differently. You know, so it's okay if Vietnam and Malaysia claim part of Philippine territory, but it's not okay if China. For me, it's not okay if any of them claim Philippine territory.
Then let's do that more strongly, consistently with China first.
We
Because
we
she
are
is
we are Your
the
Excellency.
strongest nation which is treating us most this way.
We are
So,
chair,
Madam
but
Chair.
confronting China is not necessarily or open confrontation or yung mas brave or courageous tignan in public does not necessarily produce the better results.
Fair enough, Madam Chair. In closing for this morning, I just like to say that as an Asian, pinagmamalaki ko na China is the regional power and is a rising global power. Pero gusto ko, respetuhin din nila tayo. Pareho sa sandbox, sa playground, pareho sa kalye, pareho sa West Philippine Sea. The only way a bully will respect us if we stand up to her politically and diplomatically. Never militarily. Nandyan sa ating constitution, we renounce war as an instrument of national policy. So, Madam Chair, pending the closed session wherein we hope to hear and have submitted all the details and other information on the so-called 50 to 100 diplomatic actions made against China, I would call for the deferment of the approval of the DFA budget. Amid numerous threats to and violations of our national sovereignty and territorial integrity, the administration's apparent subservient relationship with China, its policy of silence and secrecy regarding its foreign policy, as well as the harassment of our small fisher folk, we demand transparency and integrity in government's foreign policy framework and implementation. So I place that on the table, Madam Chair, for the Chair and the committee's decision at the proper time, since unfortunately I
just
have
a
to
quick
leave early, Madam
response,
Chair.
you
Thank you,
know.
Madam Chair.
There are many ways to stand up to a bully and talk to a bully. But in the same way that we're able to be brothers to the Vietnamese and Malaysians despite the dispute, we are finding ways to be brothers to the Chinese despite the dispute. And we've seen the difference of the Aquino way of standing up to the Chinese. We lost Scarborough. The Duterte way of dealing with the Chinese, we're now in co-control. So I think if you look at the results, you know, and we're not blaming anyone. You know, when President Cory Aquino met with Chairman Deng Xiaoping, they agreed. Let's talk about territorial claims. Let it be future generations. Let's just harness our relationship and see what we can do there together. So several, the Ramos administration, Estrada, Arroyo, Aquino, and now Duterte administration passed, hindi pa tayo makahanap ng solusyon sa territorial. So we're finding a solution to working together with them on that area. And as to strategy, Madam Chair, you know, we are transparent. The President Aquino asked us to be transparent. We said we are. I asked him some questions. He said, you don't share your playbook with your opponent. So being transparent and sharing our playbook or our strategy in public are two different things. But I'll assure the good senator, who's a good friend, Senator Tueros, that in the closed session, you know, you will see the nuts and you know, the nuts and bolts of the Duterte foreign policy and the Philippine independent foreign policy.
I'm looking forward to that, Madam Chair, good Secretary. Siyempre, when we're trying to be a brother or a sister to other countries, pero we have to take special note dun sa mga big brother sa atin. And we who work here, we expect that most from the DFA kasi kayo yung primus inter pares sa mga departamento. Kayo po ang primus inter pares sa mga secretary. Salamat, Madam Chair, good Secretary.
Thank you, Madam.
We're done with the budget presentation. We also requested the DFA to give us some information about the budget amendments and the areas. I have questions here. I will just submit to the DFA my questions regarding my observations on the COA report. It's a long, it will take so much time, and I wanted it in writing on some unliquidated advances, all of that. It's really just good housekeeping. And we can have a never-ending discussions on our foreign policy. We appreciate the presence of everyone here, and we would encourage the DFA for the utilization of all its funds, and ipakalat po niyo impormasyon tungkol sa pag-aaral, hindi lamang ng DFA, kundi lahat ng nasa gobyerno. And so, Minority Leader, you have more questions?
Yes, I have more questions, and particularly in reference to the proposed oil exploration, exploration of the mineral resources in the West Philippine Sea. But for purposes of our questions there, can I get a written briefing from the DFA on this?
Yes.
Because all we know is what we read in the papers,
Yes.
and I would prefer a briefing paper to the committee so that we'll understand.
With the permission of Senator Drilon, I'll send an advance copy of the briefing paper on the West Philippine Sea. Then on the joint exploration, just some points, but actually we're still
I
in
know,
the
yes.
process of the legal
Yes,
framework.
yes.
Then,
Because it's very critical.
yes.
As you,
then at
as
any
a
time,
lawyer,
sir, I
as
can.
a lawyer, you can imagine how critical this
Yes.
exploration agreement
Yes.
is. It could determine our
Yes.
our rights to
Agree,
the West
sir.
Philippine Sea.
Agree. Agree.
You know, so and there are constitutional issues involved. So we would request.
May I also commit, Senator, that if you need our briefing, even me personally, we'll make time for it because it's important that the Senate is informed.
Yeah, maybe to start with, if we can have that written briefing,
Yes.
and then whether we will have it here in open hearing or part of the closed
Yes.
door briefing.
With your permission, just allow me to finish my budget hearing on Thursday sa House.
Sure,
Tapos,
sure.
latest
No-
ho, Monday next week, we'll send
No
it
hurry,
over
no
to you.
hurry.
Thank you.
Next week is fine.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, if Madam Chair does not mind, we requested for a written briefing on a very important aspect, and this is the proposed oil exploration agreement between China and the Philippines. The reason for this is that there are constitutional implications, and it could be determine a number of legal issues. So it's very important that we be briefed on this. The Secretary has graciously agreed to send us a written brief before the next session, which could be a closed-door session, as requested by the Secretary, and maybe we can include it there as part of it. So with that, we will await the briefing paper and the notice as to when we can have the closed-door meeting. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of questions for them, Chair. And tell me if I'm overboard on my questions, because these are just sensitive questions that I have to make sure I square with it. The president is going to Israel. In fact, I'm going to be part of it, and I'm glad that he's going. Are there any repercussions with the Arab community when we go there? Do you anticipate that?
I always anticipate it's my job to be
Of course, that's why
to,
I'm asking.
to be a little bit too cautious. There are, let me put it this way, Senator, there are sensitivities. But having said that, on the record, we have continued to support the two-state solution, and to most, if not all, of our Arab friends, they appreciate our support for the two-state solution to the Palestine-Israeli conflict.
I'm glad to know that, because I think that there are always Arab sensitivities, particularly Palestinian sensitivities on the matter of Israel. But again, I thought I heard you say toothpaste, but I didn't. When you said two-state, I was gonna say that the toothpaste is already out of the tube when
That's
we
right.
voted for
That's
Israel
right.
a long time ago. No?
Yes.
But it's a two-state solution, as you say.
Yes, yes. And I've met, Senator, with the Palestinian foreign minister, and I can brief you
That's
privately on what we
Well,
discussed.
personally, we have supported the Palestinian cause in the Red Cross when we allow them to be a state that can have a Red Crescent symbol. I just want to make sure that when we go there, are we, and I would appreciate also the matter of the Iranian situation among the two. Are there other Filipinos, other similar circumstances in terms of espionage, if you will, because that's a very, very dangerous charge.
There are actually cases of alleged terrorism. We have sent some of our security experts, some from the NICA, to verify. Some of them have been cleared and let go, but some are being held in certain parts of the world. Just recently, we got a report that just recently we got a report that the German officials held someone allegedly going to the Philippines to either propagate the ISIS ideology, or so foreign nationals.
Foreign
Yes.
nationals.
So Filipinos ho, meron pong ilan, I can give you the numbers later on, held in 2 or 3 countries po.
Being accused of either terrorism or espionage.
Yes.
Yes. Because I'm very concerned about those charges when Filipinos are held in a country like Iran, or where they don't have a firm hold in terms of diplomatic relationships. We really have to focus a bit more. When we go to Israel, I'm sure the Israelis are going to try to ask us to try and move our embassy to Jerusalem. Is there a plan to do that?
To be fair to the, I've met several times with the Israeli ambassador, and
Epi Matapiao?
yes, and
Yeah.
he just inquired, is there truth? He didn't say, we're asking you to move. Of course, they say it diplomatically that other countries are moving, but there's no pressure whatsoever. Of course, the Israelis will deeply appreciate if we do it,
Yeah.
But as I said, we friends to all, enemies to none. And in diplomacy, as in politics, sometimes symbolic gestures, are more important, than actual agreements. No, so we have to be very careful of what moving to Jerusalem means, no, to the whole region. And for right now, personally, if the president asked me, I'd say it's more prudent to remain in our present embassy at this point in time.
There's always that scenario that can happen.
Yes, yes.
And when we go to Israel, I suppose we'll be looking at, you mentioned some of our people are trained in Israel for agriculture. I was there recently, and they said we had about 5,000 people who went there that were trained for agriculture. But it's woeful to know that none of these people have been utilized by the Philippines government to improve our agriculture when they come back. We don't track them down to see to it that we can utilize them for our agriculture. Is there any effort on your part to tell the Department of Agriculture to tap into this, new load of talent that was trained in Israel for agriculture? Agriculture is a very, very strong suit of the Israelis.
Agree totally, Senator. In the same manner that there's a gap between the full coordination of our embassies and the departments here when it comes to OFWs and their families, there's also a gap between the talent that we send over and get back and how to utilize them here. Part of our campaign to prevent people from leaving the country is to providing good jobs here, and many of these well trained in agriculture, unless their family has farm lots or they have a big capital, cannot find suitable employment here because of the low pay of farmers, so end up going as OFWs and applying again what they learned in countries, for example, like Japan, that still use Filipino farmers. So I agree with you totally, Senator, that there's much we can do to fill that gap.
Such as give them loans when they come back so that they can be entrepreneurs in their own right.
Yes.
From the
I think the DA, sir, has a program. I just don't know in
well,
particular.
I will ask them where they come here, but I think the initiative should come from the DFA, because you know what kind of Filipinos are going to another country for skills generation,
Yes.
for technology, sourcing. And I think that's important that the policy be made by DFA, that every time somebody goes abroad, when they come back, we see to it that they're utilized, nagagamit natin.
The
Or nasa
information,
supportan natin.
the command and information system I was mentioning a while ago, will have that component. The database of Filipinos abroad and those studying can be generated by this and can be used as far as analytics, no, as the individual will permit, to be able to shepherd them to the areas that where we can help or they can help the country.
Because maraming support na may bibigay sa atin ng Israel sa training, at napakahalaga na magamit natin yan We cannot just give up and shrug our shoulders and say walang trabaho sa kanila rito. But these are the areas where instead of CCT, dapat mabigyan sila ng pagkakataon makapagnegosyo so that they can expand their skills, di ba? And I'd like to see something like that coming out of DFA, perhaps a personal briefing, if you like, on how we can put that into law, if that is necessary. We can make a law to that effect, requiring certain agencies of the government financial resources to prioritize these people who were trained. Sayang naman, naturuan, pero hindi magamit dahil walang pera. That's one point.
We'll do that, Senator, and report back to you on the mechanism we'll put
Thank
in
you.
place.
Thank you very much. The other thing is, I'm sure that Israel would be a great source of equipment for our military. You know, I was listening to your conversation with Senator Reese kanina, and she was saying we should be more aggressive, no? And I understand where you're coming from. Don't you sometimes feel that you're in a very, very hard place because you have the desire, but on the other hand, you don't have the extension of military capability to exercise an effective diplomacy. In other words, kung wala kang gamit, you're like somebody bringing a knife to a gunfight. Di ba? Di ba? You feel that? I mean, di ba?
Agree po, agree.
So in other words, pwede sabihin sa iyo ng China, alis ka dyan, sabihin sa iyo ng China, make me. At pinabis nila yung make me, anong gagawin natin? Tiklo pa tayo. And kung meron tayong capability, do you think that it's important that, and I'm sure you're doing this, I'm just doing this for the people listening outside, kailangan natin ng madagdagan ang capability ng ating mga kasundaluhan para makatabla tayo kahit paano, at least maka-points tayo. Kumbaga, meron naman silang pag-iilagang katulad ng ginawa ng Finland sa Russia nung araw, na kahit na malinggit silang bayan, natablahan nila yung Russia for a while. Or ng Israel, surrounded by many countries na hostile, meron silang gamit kahit na nung araw sa umpisa, ang ginagamit nila ay mga lumang eroplano na Messerschmitt ng Germany sa kanilang Air Force in 1947. Pero nakatabla sila at napalawak nila yan. So when we go to Israel, I suppose, are we looking for arms? Are we looking for them supplying us with submarines, or are we looking for training, for example? What are we going to? What's the end of it? Because magaling ang kanilang technology sa computers. Magaling sila sa kanilang munitions, no? Because we need a munitions industry here. Hindi tayo makagawa ng sarili nating bala. Meron tayong konting ginagawa pero hindi suficiente. What are we looking for when we go to Israel?
Sir, let me first totally agree with you that just because we're friends to all and enemies to none, that doesn't mean we should be defenseless.
Of course.
So definitely po, we have to ramp up our defense capability. And part of having a good economy, the Kino government started rebuilding our military. The president is, in fact, pulling projects from the phase 3 na dapat matagal pa into the phase 2 so that in the next few years we can quantum leap or leapfrog sa atin capabilities, Army, Navy, Air Force. So far ho, almost lahat ng bansang pinuntahan ng ating Pangulo, we look at some, it can be military, it can be civilian, like Coast Guard vehicles. Most of the time it's maritime, and a lot of times also it's on anti-terrorism. Marawi opened our eyes that it's not only in the forest or rice fields that we can have conflicts. Urban warfare, ibang-iba ho talaga.
Yeah.
And on the side of DFA naman ho, what we're doing also is also helping the military and the police get grants so that hindi naman lahat ay a public expenditure. So some of them are grants, and you've seen the fast boats and other equipment Japan has given, the weapons that the light arms that China has given, and also those delivered by the Russian government.
Extra eyes in the sky, like radar.
Yes.
Is that being provided by the United States right now?
I think the security people will better brief you, Senator, but especially in Marawi, a number of countries,
Australia,
especially US and Australia, provided us with the high technology that needs, then again China with the small arms. But Israel, I think, is a natural destination for security training and defense. But SND, the Secretary of National Defense will be joining us, and I heard some senior military and police may also be joining.
My point in saying this is the Chinese significant development has happened that they have converted their Coast Guard as part of their military police, which was the mistake of the Aquino administration earlier, if I may say so, respectfully. No? That when we went after the Chinese fishermen with our so-called
Gray ship.
new Coast Guard cutter sa US, pero ginawa nating man of war dito sa ating ginawa nating Philippine Navy, eh binalikan tayo ng isang damakmak na barko nila na Coast Guard, about 50 to even 100 ships. Kaya medyo natameme tayo ng konti. Yung nga sinasabi ko kayo na pag sinabi sa iyo na katulad ng Cuba nung araw, pinapaalis ng Amerikano yung missiles sa yung Amerikano pinapaalis sa sabi ng Amerikano, make me. Ito sinasabi ng China, make me. Wala tayong gamit. Pero kahit na paano, meron naman tayong mga makikita katulad ng Taiwan, nung araw mas mahina, pero ngayon ang Taiwan may capability, or ang Vietnam may capability na bigyan ng bloody nose yung susugod sa kanila, or India, in the case of India in the 50s, lumaban sila sa China at umatras ang China. Umatras sila ang China sa Vietnam nung away nila tungkol sa Cambodia. And Taiwan, nabigyan rin ng bloody nose sa US mentioned paracels. And the reality is, kahit ano sabihin natin, may mga missiles ngayon sa paracels, pero kahit na nakadirect I suppose sa Taiwan, eh, aabot rin dito sa atin. No? So even if they don't put any in the islands, meron pa rin sila sa China na aabot yung mga missiles nila dito o yung kanilang Air Force aabot dito. So sinasabi ko ngayon ay simple lang. Anong reaction natin ngayon kung gano'n? Siyempre dapat meron tayo kahit na paanong panapat. Kaya tayo pupunta siguro sa Israel dahil dyan. Kung gano'n panapat, tagal ko na sinasabi ito. In fact, last year, sabi ko yung pera ng Train 1, dapat 13% mapunta sa military. Para sabi ko nga, enrich the country, strengthen the military. Hindi ako nag-invento niyan. Hapon ang nagsabi dyan nung the Meiji Restoration. Palakasin natin ang ekonomiya natin, palakasin rin natin ang ating military para tayo ay hindi matutulak-tulak. Nakita nga nila na kaya silang pagtulakan ng Amerikano nung dumating sa Japan yung si Commodore Perry. Having said that, bakit ngayon sinasabi ng Amerikano, huwag kang bumili ng submarine sa Russia? Para naman panghihimasok nata sa atin yun na hindi naman sila nagbibigay sa atin ng submarine, wala naman silang ino-offer sa atin ng submarine. Eh sa palagay ba bilang Secretary ng Foreign Affairs, eh dapat ba tugunan natin yung sinasabi nila in a positive or a negative way? I have not heard anything to that effect except from the President.
Yes.
And I think that's very emotional insofar as the President is concerned, and rightfully so, if I may say so. Kung ako sasabihin niya, hindi ka naman namin sinasabing wag mag-supply doon sa kabilang bayan, pero kami, wag mo sabihin na wag kaming kumuha ng gamit sa ibang bansa o kung wala kang ibibigay sa amin. Yan binibigay nga the other day, medyo lumala ng konti ang sunog, nagbibigay ng F-16s, pero sabi ng Presidente, hindi ko kailangan yan. Pero tingin ko, kailangan natin yan kahit paano, panapat sa Chinese Air Force. No? Pero mahal ang maintenance. No? So, dapat hahanap tayo ng panapat na kaya rin natin. No? Pero hindi natin pwede sabihin, forever kaya natin di ba? Hindi natin kaya Hindi natin pwede sabihin, habang buhay hindi natin kaya. Katulad nga nung nag-uusapan natin kanina na kailangan pakita natin na meron naman dignidad ang ating bansa sa foreign residents natin sa ating mga konsulada. No? So, to make a long story short, ano ang nai-recommend mo ngayon sa bansa natin? Bibili ba tayo na, siyempre, di pa naman tayo nakakadesisyon dyan, pero we should be free to buy our weapons from everybody else, right?
Answer directly, yes, we should be free to buy from everybody and anyone. Our
Right.
neighbors are doing so.
Yes.
It's the smarter thing to do because if sometimes they have different kinds of weaponry and ammunition. So if all your weaponry is from one country and that country refuses to supply you with the ammunition, may baril ka, wala ka namang bala. So a lot of
Katulad ng Hamilton. Di ba?
So,
Binigyan tayo ng barko pero tinanggal yung weapon system.
yes. At kahit tulad yan,
Hindi, para malaman ng tao.
Oo.
Ipapaliwanag ko lang.
Yeah.
Binigyan tayo ng Amerikano ng barko, pero tinanggal yung missile system, tinanggal yung weapon system. Nagkakagulo pa tayo ngayon kung ano ilalagay nating weapon system doon. Eh, hindi naman tama yun, di ba?
so to your answer, how do we react? We have each administration, including the Aquino administration, I believe, looked at the facts of the grounds, look at their options, and tried to make the best call. Ang lamang lang siguro ng susunod na administrasyon, may hindsight siya. That's why we've never really attacked the Aquino strategy because it was based on what was available information on the ground.
Tama yun.
But they are attacking some critics, are not all, some are attacking the
Present administration.
Duterte's reaction as if papatay-patay or defeatist, when actually it's more effective now. So just because we are not confrontational, like a debater or nakikipag-away, it doesn't mean that we don't aggressively take diplomatic action. And part of strong diplomacy is having a strong military component behind you. Even the U.S. uses that. The freedom of navigation is not to enforce the Hague decision or to recognize any territorial claim. It's to show the U.S. policy of freedom of navigation, of no excessive maritime claim, but to show also that they have a military that will back up their national interest and their public diplomacy.
So, of course, principal interest muna nila yan.
Principal
diba?
interest muna nila.
Pero,
secondary
na rin
so
yan.
to your question about the Assistant Secretary of State's statement, again, I would let him look at what's more effective. In the Duterte administration, you come here and you tell us what to do. We're going to tell you back. You have no business telling us what to do. But you go here quietly and tell us, you're allies, you've helped us for many years, there's so much we can do together, then we'll consider buying from you or having dealing with you. But when we made several new friends around the world, simple din lang po sinabi ng senator sa amin wag lang makialam yung iba sa relationship natin. Kami hindi makikialam sa relationship sa iba. So none of the other countries are telling us don't buy from the US. So now it's different, sir.
Pero realpolitik nga yung
That's
sinasabi
right.
natin, di ba? Totoo
But
yan
let me just make a distinction. If it's the UN Security Council and being a responsible member of the UN, that's a different thing. So katulad po ng sanctions sa North Korea, we continue to enforce that because that's a UN Security Council measure na may sanctions. But if it's a unilateral US sanction, we have to balance our interest. Of course, sometimes it's in our interest to go along with our old ally and partner. But sometimes we have to also make decisions that are...
Hindi ba yung situation sa China dyan sa mga isla na yan ang issue dyan talaga nasa karagatan natin yan, dumadaan lahat dyan ang ating trade. Pwede tayong ma-interdict. Hindi lang yung Japan, hindi lang yung ibang bansa, yung Middle East na dumadaan ang langis nila dyan. Tayo mismo, ma-interdict yung ating mga bibilhin na o papadala natin sa ibang bansa. Kung ang humahawak niyan ay kaya tayong takot-takutin. Di ba yan ang issue? At pangalawang issue rin na of equal importance ay yung mga islang kiniklaim natin kung saan tayo pwede makapaghanap buhay sa isda. Pwede tayo makadiscover ng langis, magagamit natin yan. At talagang dapat panindigan rin natin. At sa pagpapanindigan natin yan ganyan, kailangan rin natin na magkaroon tayo ng sarili nating gamit. Katulad ng submarine, katulad ng radar, katulad ng aeroplano. At business na natin yon kung saan natin bibilihin yung gamit natin. Di po ba?
Agree, Senator.
But on the other hand, para real politics also dictates na kung may gamit ka kahit na paano at nagkaroon ng kaguluhan dyan, at nakita naman natin, nagdagdag yung gamit ng Taiwan, na meron na silang super missiles na pwedeng labanan yung maraming missiles ng China, hindi nila matatalo siguro, pero may panapat sila. Yun ang prinsipyong gusto kong paabot.
Yung deterrence, Senator.
Meron kahit na konting deterrence, may panapat kahit na paano, may pantabla. In other words, hindi ka na nagdadala lamang ng kutsilyo sa barilan, meron ka na rin konting baril para matakot rin yung kabila.
Agree, Senator. May I just point out one point, na totoo po na we can learn a lot from Vietnam. And we're studying that. But yung sinabi po ni Secretary Harry Roque, totoo din po yun, that when the President met the leader of Vietnam, sinabihan talaga siya. I admire how you're dealing with China, and Vietnam wants to learn
Tama
with how
yan.
the Philippines is dealing with China. So we have things to learn from others, but we're also doing
I
some
think in
things
terms of foreign
correctly.
policy, I don't disagree with the president, except for the, the PIs, which is our country, PI, Philippine Islands, no, and all the other things. No, medyo PI. Yun sila. Ikaw rin, mahilig ka ron. uh, in other words, I think it has been effective to a certain extent because wala naman tayong ibubuga kung talagang tutusin. Pero may binubuga naman natin. Uy, huwag ka naman sumusobra. Di ba? Yung sinabi mo kanina, naiintindihan ko yun, na pag lumipad dito yung Chinese, uy, lumala ka dito. Pero ang problema natin, ito ang masakit sa atin eh. Kung may lilipad sa atin, hindi natin namalayan, lumilipad na pala sa atin eh.
Dahil kulang po tayo sa
Yun ang
capability.
sinasabi. That is the point. Before tayo mag-ingay na gagawin natin sa China yon, sa atin mismo, lumilipad yung eroplano ng China, ng Amerikano, ng Vietnamese, o ng sino man, hindi natin masabi, huwag kang lumipad dito. Wala tayong kamalay-malay, pinapasok yung space natin, pero wala tayong binubuga. And the point, therefore, is we really have to improve our capability para meron tayong credibility. Kumbaga, dinagay mo si Jordan Clarkson sa Philippine team, medyo nakalapit tayo sa China, at na-booking pa rin dahil akala natin overnight mananalo tayo sa Korea, kailangan mahaba-haba yung laro ng konti, yung practice, di ba? Di ba? Iba nagmamadali na kaya kagad makipag-boxing, sabi nga ni Pacquiao, pwede tayong mag-boxing, pero hindi.
Pero kung 3 quarters lang po, panalo tayo.
Okay, 3 quarters
problema,
panalo,
4
pero
quarters.
talo pa rin sa uli. But, so I just want to make sure na yung mga nanonood, pinapansin natin dahil kumisan, kung magsalita tayo, baka akala ng iba, mahina tayo dahil hindi tayo pumapalag, o masyado naman tayo mapusog kahit wala tayo bubuga. And that is reality that I want to say. Na lumilipad sa taas niya, wala tayong alam. Kaya kailangan, ang tao, doon na talagang dapat magdagdag tayo ng kakayahan natin. At kahit na konti, may kakayahan. At katulad ng interpreter, katulad ng magiging Arabic ko natin, hindi magagawa overnight. Sa loob ng taon yan, 10, 20 taon para magkaroon tayo ng expertise. Di ba?
100%, Senator, and we appreciate your support. But in the same manner that we don't see eye to eye with Senator Hontiveros, I'd like to assure her that we're here to...
No, I'm not referring to Senator Hontiveros. I'm just... It's
but,
not personal.
Yeah, just from the DFA
I
lang
agree
po.
with her to a certain extent.
Yes, kami din naman po. That's what we're saying. I think we all agree in where we want to go to, with what we want to happen, but the strategy getting there, so we need a national consensus. And I was just going to say, that's why I also appreciate Senator Drilon's request for the briefing and to talk about this closed door, because if we can come up with a national consensus on how to deal with oil and gas, how to deal with freedom of navigation, how to deal with territorial claims, etc., we might disagree on tactics and certain strategies, but we'll have a national consensus on how we are forward. We always hear that China has a national plan, a regional plan, an international plan, a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 1,000-year plan. So I hear that all the time, Senator. But
Silk and Belt Road na
yes.
May plano sila.
So ang sagot ko sa kanila, dun sa mga nagsasabi when we discuss in the department, why don't we have a regional plan? Why don't we have a 5-year, 25-year, 50, 100-year plan?
That's correct.
So we shouldn't just criticize their plan. We should also make our plan, and hopefully we can come up with a national
In other words,
consensus.
don't get mad, get even.
I can't say that as a diplomat, pero I'll take your word for it po.
The late Ambassador Ga once told me that when we were being berated by a senator, and sabi ko, ako na ang bibira, kaya ko yan, hindi ako foreign affairs, senator ako. But that's the point, isn't it? So, pagka pinakita ko sa inyo, ang China may 73 submarines, may 39 corvettes, ang Japan may 17 submarines, may 6 na corvette, ang North Korea may 86 submarines, may 2 corvette, ang Israel may 6 na submarine, 3 corvette, tapos pagdating sa Indonesia may 3 submarine, may 24 corvette. Sa Pilipinas, walang submarine. At ang Air Force, all air, raw force pa rin, dapat talaga magkaroon na tayo ng konting kamalayan na hindi tayo makakaagwanta kagad, pero magpapakita tayo ng gilas, parang basketball, ano? Pero dadagdagan na natin unti-unti ang ating kakayahan. That's the only point I wanted to make.
I agree 100%, Senator. And yes, there are still a lot of challenges, but some good news. Yesterday, the Philippine Navy returned and the FOIC
Yeah, I
report,
saw the reception. Yeah.
yung pong galing sa RIMPAC.
Yeah.
And the head of the commander of the Pacific Fleet was here a few weeks ago, and I met with him, and he said, you know, they were so happy and so proud of the Philippine contingent, and they actually added, you know, to the experience and the value of the naval exercises. So we're making some headway in some areas. Pero katulad nga po sa submarine, as I said, no, many of our neighbors already have. You know, so
Precisely.
ang tinitignan natin yung mga missile o radar sa ibabaw. Pero etong mga nasa ilalim na hindi kita na, you know, that we should be paying attention to, nandyan.
My point is, mahirap maging foreign secretary na makikipag-negotiate kung wala kang bala. Di ba?
Yes.
So, it's really just for...
At kung walang budget din, Senator.
Yun na nga, bala is budget to me. Bala is budget. May budget ka, dinalagay mo sa Asian Games eh. Touché. Anyway, to make a long story short, it's important that we let the public realize the real nuts and bolts about it, because tayo nagkakaintindihan tayo. Yung public nanonood lang at kung minsan sumusunod lang. Kung di nila alam kung anong punot dulo, madaling makuha ng mga nakakabighaning salita, di ba?
Senator, just to clarify, the 7.5 billion wouldn't have been used for DFA. It was actually we proposed it under the Office of the President, ES, just the same as the ASEAN last year.
Right.
But ES talked to me that it will be better if there's one accountable person and department. So the SEA Games will not go to the DFA if we don't
that's
have
all right with me, but I remember when I was a kid not too very long ago, we hosted the Asian Games here and we were very proud. Yung Rizal Memorial, Coliseum, yung baseball, yung track and field natin was the state of the art at that
2005.
time.
Yeah.
We were the #1 baseball country in Asia at the time.
Yes.
Pero ngayon hindi na natin ma-host Southeast Asian Games.
Yeah.
Madadali talagang hirapan pa tayo. Hindi pa tayo manalo ngayon sa ibang mga sports. Buti nga medyo maganda ang bronze natin. Nakatatlong gold tayo recently. So, ganyan rin Ganun ang buhay So, to me, I go back, medyo na baka napapalayo tayo, no? Is para to enable our country and to ennoble it, kailangan talaga we enrich the country through jobs and investments, but at the same time, strengthen our military para may capability tayong makipagtantanan doon sa mga malalaking bansa. So, having said that, hindi naman magagawa ng China yung ginagawa niya nung araw kung naandyan pa yung Subic Naval Base ng Amerikano, di ba?
Agree po.
That's my point. Because at that time, I was arguing, hindi pa oras noon.
You were ahead of your time, ho.
No.
Nakita niyo ho yung mangyayari.
Yun ang reality. Pag alis na may vacuum, magpapalakas sila. At ngayon, hindi naman ako naniniwala na aasa tayo forever sa Amerika. Kaya gusto ko, yung ginagawa ninyo ngayon sa administrasyon, nabibili tayo ng submarine. Kung sa Russia magbibigay ng kaya natin, hindi magpakita tayo sapagkat mahirap makita yung submarine. Pero of course, may mga sonar, may mga radar. Pero at least meron tayong panlaban na ganyan. I was going to ask you other questions, pero doon na lang sa...
Senator, just sa games, and I know how special to you Subic is.
Yes.
I'll just give you a briefing papers. But just to give an idea to the committee, worldwide now, no, the sports tourism is growing.
Yes.
And it's about a $7.6 billion industry as of now. And the good thing about the Philippines is our weather. So, for example, professional baseball or football, soccer,
Yes.
pagka winter sa kanila,
Pwede mag-practice
naghahanap sila. And Clark, Subic, and that corridor would be such a great
The
area.
first thing I
So we're
did,
building
one of
facilities
the first
for
things
that.
I did when I was Secretary of Tourism was to go to Japan and try to get the Yomiuri Giants and the Dragons to come and practice in the Philippines. Pero hindi pa upgraded yung field natin. Ginagawa nila sa Guam yan. And speaking about tourism and DFA, yung nangyari last week sa ating airport, nakasakit sa atin yan, di ba?
Opo.
Nakasakit sa atin yan. Pero hindi ko maintindihan ba't walang sumigaw doon sa administrasyon. May airport sa Subic, ba't di nyo ginamit? And I just want to remind you na ginamit siya nung araw nung may nag-crash sa China Airlines in 1995. Dinala lahat yung mga 747s, dinala sa Subic at nagbuhat kami lahat ng maleta noon dahil hindi pa kami handa. Pero hindi napahiya ang Pilipinas. And that's what I mean. Put your money where your mouth is. Thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned about sports. This is not my expertise, but it's
Yes, it is.
something, I mean, okay, I'm interested to help out for sports diplomacy, which is part of cultural diplomacy. And let's say football. The Filipinos could excel in football, and we could have exchanges in football. In fact, there's a letter from the DFA here, from the Philippine Embassy Berlin, for an exchange program, actually for the Bayern Munich visit to the Philippines, which will be my amendment, which I hope the DFA will support, of course you will, for augmentation of the budget for Ambassador Manalo. I think is already in Berlin. Here, one of our consuls has this letter, and I'll give you a copy. I don't see yet the exact amount, but this is just something that, no costing yet. It's just something that we could do, little things, but actually little things for culture, whether it's Hibla or Venice Biennale or football diplomacy or ang dami-daming kayang gawin. Oo. And I just took off from, I heard the word soccer or football here and during
Baseball.
winter, baseball, etc. Yeah. So I just have a concern which is below the radar of everyone. It's not been discussed, and I'm wondering why. I know that since 2013, 14, or 15, the Manila-Acapulco galleon route has been pushed, supposedly, as the first form of globalization in the world, and is being nominated, or we were working for it to be nominated in the World Heritage List of UNESCO. I feel a lack of push or interest on the part of a DFA. I hope I am mistaken. And it seems like Mexico will instead work with Thailand to push for the Acapulco galleon route because of the disinterest or lack of support of the Philippines. So may I just know who is the focal person in the DFA and perhaps the status of this, and we should push it. And if we need to fund it, we will, because the globalization started with the Philippines and in our area. And the late Senator Angara started this with the former ambassador, the Mexican ambassador? No. Yes, and the Mexican ambassador, what is his name? Basta previous, 2-3 ambassadors ago, 2013, 14. It was Professor Eric Zerudo who updated me on this. I think he was, what was he in DFA? Was he UNESCO before? Yes. Yes, he's very knowledgeable on this. So I would request that DFA be updated on this, and I hope that we share the same interest to pursue where we started so that Mexico does not simply divert to Thailand and we lose that gain of being in the World Heritage List, because I know that the Silk Route of China is in contention as well. There's another one. Ano yung tatlo?
Yeah.
Tatlo yun.
Madam Chair, I met with the
Tatlo yung contention.
Ambassador of Mexico and made it very clear to him that we want the participation and the the acknowledgement, the participation activities towards the galleon trade. And in addition to that, that in 2021 will be the 600-year anniversary of coming of Christianity. And many Filipinos do not know that we were administered by Spain through Acapulco, through Mexico. So that's something we're working on. And in fact, not only with Mexico, I had lunch last week with the Latin American bloc, the ambassadors from South America, and we discussed these historic ties. And as I said, they look at us as their Latin American brothers across the seas. So, ganun ang affinity sa...
Do we have a focal person or a staff in charge or officers? Sino sa kanila?
UNESCO is...
UNESCO. It's Lila?
Our UNIO and our UNESCO.
UNEO and UNESCO.
Yes.
So it would be Lila. No? No? Ano? Lila's Unacom. Who's
Yes.
UNESCO now?
Yes, ma'am. We provide the experts, but it's really under UNEO.
Who's UNEO now?
Well, you're looking for the UNEO representative,
Where's
madam.
UNEO, please? Yes.
Yeah.
May I have her name, please, so that we know. Newly appointed UNEO? Yes. Could the lady, she's an officer, yes. Could you just have the name, please, and the position, newly designated UNEO head, and to stay on after this to meet with my staff so that we know what are the needs we will support. Sayang, oo. I remember I helped the previous ambassador to France, what is his name, the one from La Union, secure the seat in UNESCO when I headed, yeah, ask her. When we helped campaign when I was in Paris, when I headed the Philippine delegation there to UNESCO a couple of years ago. So, may I have your name, please? I'm sorry.
Diba si Horos yun?
Yes,
So, yeah,
ma'am.
La
We've
Union?
met before. I'm Norilyn Baha from UNIO. Norilyn Baha po. We've met before. So
Did we discuss this before? Not
no,
yet,
no,
no?
no, no.
Yes.
But we do coordinate with UNESCO on this issue closely with our embassy in Paris. For this thing.
So we did not leave the bid for the World Heritage List.
As
We did
far-
not show this interest. Why does Mexico feel this way? Apparently, that's the report from here.
There has been discussions, ma'am, with Mexico, the Philippines, and I think Spain.
Perhaps we would,
But we could,
if you could give us a memo
okay.
within the week on where we're at, so that we know what kind of support we could give the DFA, and if we would assume, since you're head of NURIO, you'd be an expert in this, to give us the updates, no, from where it started to now, and what efforts. Can you just show me in the budget where is the budgetary allocation for our UNESCO bid for World Heritage, if any? Because if you don't have it, that means you're not showing interest.
Pati pag,
Today's Tuesday. We
Yeah.
would request for the
pati
memo
pag may
within the week.
mga candidacies tayo, saan natin kinukuha yung pang-support?
Good afternoon.
State your name, please. Thank you.
I'm Lindsay Barrientos, Deputy Executive Director of the UNESCO National Commission of the Philippines. For our office, ma'am, the bulk of the budget that is being given by the government is really used for the bids, not just for World Heritage, but also for the other UNESCO programs. So most of our MOOE would really go for those activities, starting with support or technical assistance to the proponents like local governments, until the tapping of experts for the review and study of the nomination bid, and for meetings and coordinations as guided by DFA.
This is to help local governments in case something within their area is bidding, right? Like Hamigita, no? Yung kay Malanyao noon. I'm talking about the Manila Acapulco. So, how much, if you know, from UNEO and UNESCO, is your budgetary allocation for next year? And this, no, in fact, for this year, 2018 GAA, and for next year, because it's an ongoing, it's nothing new. This is, we're in 2018. This was started by the late Senator
Yes,
Angara in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Yes, ma'am.
Kaya ang gusto ko pong malaman, between UNEO and UNESCO, where we are at, where's the budgetary allocation, if any, and why do I get reports that we've lost interest or support, and so Mexico will go to Thailand to explore this possibility? We will lose it, sayang.
Ma'am, from this side, if I can just add about the budget, sir. In 2015, around 2 million pesos was allocated for that initiative, wherein part of it or bulk of it was used for a publication, ma'am. It's called Barkadahan sa Galyon. And that was also a project of Professor Zerudo. On the expert side, they were able to accomplish all the program of work, and there's a remaining fund under that is allocated, but we were advised to await first the developments on the ministry to ministry level before we proceed with the next step. So in terms of the expert studies and consultations, it moved, and we produced a publication for it, but we will be awaiting guidelines on what will be the next step after the ministry to ministry talk.
Senator, Chairman,
Yes.
Chairperson, going straight to the point, I think the way the DFA still does it is that we estimate ilan yung candidacies, ano mga importante, then just put a lump sum. But senators having to go through a gruesome campaign before winning understands that you cannot do it that way. Kailangan may target talaga, may pera, ganyan. And I don't know exactly about yung sa galleon trade, no, but we sometimes lose mga bid na ganito precisely because the other countries see the value, whether it's sa tourism or sa culture or the trade with that country. They put in the money for that bid. Diba? Tayo, in fact, we sometimes wait till the last minute, but actually, kung 2019 yan, 2020, dapat 2018, may budget na yung bid natin na yan. So, anyway, we're
Well, you have our support on that.
yes,
I'm sure Laura
we'll
and
look
I
at
will
it
work on
now, and I'll just give a directive that we look at specific targets, bids, campaigns, and have a specific amount for it.
Madam Chair, I just want to say this before I leave. I have to leave. I have an appointment at 1 o'clock. I just want to say that really, when you say globalization started with Acapulco, globalization started in the Philippines in 1521 when the Magellan expedition floundered in the Philippines and was continued by Sebastian Elcano, and they circumnavigated the world for the first time. So from that standpoint, I think the Philippines can claim globalization started Spain and the Philippines and went back to Europe. No? And at the same time, I was suggesting that in the Acapulco trade, and you're very right, many of the things that we have here came from Mexico through the Viceroy of Mexico. What is important is we give credit to the people of Albay and the people of Cavite. If you remember the Cavite Mutiny, diyan ginagawa yung mga barko ng galleon nung araw at saka doon sa Albay. So it's important, or one of the Bicol towns anyway, it's important that kahit paano, I was suggesting to Senator Legarda that we make a model of that, to make a ship like that, which we had once upon a time in Subic, with a little ship like that, and show that we really are serious. We should start off with that. By the way, 1521 will be celebrating the 500 years ba? 500 years of Spain, of bumping into the Philippines. Not discovering, bumping into the Philippines. And I'm glad. So the globalization really started here. And I just want to say, just for one last hit, I'm glad that the President is taking note of Lapu-Lapu. He is not a fish. He's a Filipino na ang sagisag ng sa manlulupig hindi ka pasisiil, which will be celebrating also in 1521. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you very
intervention,
much,
Senator
Senator.
Gordon. It's 1 o'clock. We're all busy from hunger. So may I just request UNIO to give us an update on that, and we would like to support it, UNESCO as well, and have a small group meeting, not a hearing, between UNIO, UNESCO, BFA, Professor Zerudo, who knows about it, and my office dito lang sa Senado kung pwede.
Madam Chair, may
Yes.
we request that we also just submit some proposals for special provisions for your consideration?
Yes, please. Okay, and then the COA reports, I just have questions. I won't put it, we'll just submit it. And Senator Drilon was requesting earlier for an executive meeting on his questions on the joint expiration. May we know when it is, or let's schedule the executive meeting, because I will now adjourn the budget hearing subject to the submissions of the DFA for the suspend, but deem deem submitted na yung budget. Yes, but we will have an executive meeting on the joint expiration. So if you don't have the dates now, we'll find a common date before plenary to comply with the request of the minority leader for the joint expiration memo or agreement, and the submission of the other documents for augmentation of your budget. So and we take note seriously of the questions of Senator Ontiveros, but we will not withhold your budget. We will consider it deemed submitted for plenary, but you have to submit to me the answers for those questions, because I will be asked those questions as well. I have more questions, but we can talk forever, but we're hungry. And all I want to convey is our support. You see the support of all our colleagues, and We will look seriously into your Tier 2, and you will also give us the priorities. If it's not 1.8, which of those are your priorities? So thank you very much, Secretary Cayetano. We suspend
Thank you, Madam Chair.
today's hearing. Thank you. Okay.